All right, let's see if that works. All right, can you guys hear me now? How about now? Can you hear me now? If you can, then I know exactly what I did wrong. I'll fix all my settings while I'm at it. Okay, there we go. All right, yeah, so I had my channels were messed up. My bad. Like I said, we're going to go over everything I just said again. Again, thank you, Brian. I do appreciate that super chat. He said I haven't hit the super chat in a long time, and I got paid recently, so I do appreciate that, my friend. I I promise you, I said what's up to every single one of you. Please don't make me say it again. Please. Another one. Let's see what he says. Oh, well, shit, Aaron. Thank you, my friend. He says, shout out to Brian and Chills. I guess that super chat's for you guys. All right, so like I said, I was trying to say, and you guys didn't hear me. Basically, I had an interesting conversation with we'll call her Doxia on 24/7's Discord server, and many of you know who this person is. I just rather not say the name because I guess out of respect, but she made a lot of claims that don't suffice with me. And then she gave a request for an experiment that I instantly thought, I don't have a drone that can do what she asked, but I know someone who does. My boy B-Ball, and B-Ball for Life in the chat. Thank you again for the upload that you put up. If you guys haven't yet, go check out B-Ball's B-Ball for Life's YouTube channel. He's putting stuff up. Good great observations. Let me see. Make sure. What? Don't have it here. And I need to do that, B-Ball. I do apologize. I need to put B-Ball's link into the chat down here. But if you do go to my Discord server, B-Ball does have a channel in my server, B-Ball for Life Observations, and you can see his observations, get to his YouTube channel and everything. So go check him out. Yeah, Demonic. I'm not sure if you knew her prior to her return. That was same old. I think it's funny. Here's the thing. So I'm gonna play a few clips. Not too long, but the last clip we'll play is basically the experiment challenge that she gave under the ideas that we were talking curvature and obstruction, and how in her beliefs that atmosphere can cause obstruction, along with a whole bunch of other gibbly gobble. One of the things that I have started to realize in my journey is that my questions don't get answered. Not my question. My questions get answered. I start to form an understanding, but more importantly, I gain more. Like, I have more questions every time something's answered. So, to anyone out there listening who thinks I'm full of shit, or I don't care, or I'm not a real truther, again, test me. Go back in my archives. I am a real truther. I'm sorry. And if you can't handle it, that's your problem. If you don't understand why I left Flat Earth, that's, again, your problem. But Grayson, oh, shit, damn it. Doxia likes to point out that it's not logical to do a lot of things. But I'm going to let that go, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open the panel. I wasn't going to do it this way. I was going to play through. But actually, no. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play the clips first, so that way everyone gets to hear it evenly. And then what I'm going to do is open it up from there. So let's go ahead and start this up. And go see what we get. Want to see... Oh, there it is. Perfect. Now we'll go to this one. Like the first time I've ever done this before. What the hell? All right, here we go. My bad. It must play. All right, it didn't play, so I gotta move it over. I do apologize again, because I would blame... Let's blame... I think Grizz was in the chat. Let's blame him. Dave Gafford asked me, Sean G, off topic, but do you believe Building 7 fell because of office fires in 9/11? Yes. Or no. Yes and no. Yes, definitely office fires and fuel and parts and building debris. But more importantly, I don't believe in the narrative. I am very much so a skeptic. I do believe it was a false flag, but I have facts behind why I believe so. And I hope, and in my opinion, they build up to enough evidence to show. But did you see the clip of the roof of Building 7 collapse? I think it was about 15 minutes prior to the building actually falling itself, which would explain the structural damage. But that's here nor there. I'd like to know if you see that. It wasn't a demo. I can point out the details and show you how it's not a demo, if you're willing to. But until then, let's go ahead and get this up and play this video. Where is it? Are these clips? I'm probably going to skip one or two of them because one or two of them isn't really necessary, but what the hell? I have no idea what just happened. Which recording was that? 1 second. Oh, I just switched videos. That's crazy. Okay, so Dave in the chat says, I'm in construction, so building falls like that. Yes, I am willing to know why no demo. Okay, I'm also in construction, but I'm not going to say that and I've done numerous demolitions and not myself, but I have contracted many demos, so I do have an idea of how it works. But yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in having a conversation with you and going over it. No problem, as long as you're rational and don't feel the need to say anything stupid like it didn't happen. All right, so well, Fred, you don't have to be a structural engineer to research it and have an idea. What's up, True Blue? I would agree, but I would call it more scripted. All right, cool. Nope. All right, Dave. Maybe after let me get through this, and then we'll talk about it. Like I said, it's open topic. I don't mind. But I got to get the clip up that you guys want to see. There it is. All right, hang on 1 second while I get it so you guys can. There's actually really nothing to see. I don't know why the hell that matters so much. It's literally just. Hang on. I'll show you because you guys don't ever believe me. It's just scenery that I'm playing during the recording. It's not going to be anything special. But let's go ahead and do this. All right, now that we've had all that dead air time, let's actually do this. I got to do it this play way. Wrong one. Wrong one. Wrong one. When is it in? Oh, so it played it anyway. Okay, here we go. Jeez, after all that, it's a nice moon, right? I took that picture. All right, here we go. I actually took it off the screen thinking you guys wouldn't see it, but it did. And there's something up with this video. It makes my CPU go crazy. I don't know what's up with it. Anyway, all right, so I'll go and share this, and then we will be able to listen in because I'm just gonna jump to the little spots. And and by the way, I was off my mic, not thinking about it, so you're not going to hear a lot of me, but it is me and her having this conversation along with a bunch of other trolls in 24/7. But here you guys go.
So it's moving independent of us?
Last one.
All right, so here's the first one. This is, again, they asked me in 24/7 what was my big proof that it wasn't flat Earth, and my favorite now is obviously the lunar eclipse. And so this is what we were discussing at the beginning of this part. My eye isn't going to be perfect to the exact spots I'm pointing it, so that could be the change in it. more or less.
That's true.
I got to see that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Sean,
yeah.
since I began the discussion with you, because I wanted to know why you decided to shift your view, and then all the other little globies had to, ugh, they all had to jump in. I'm speaking to you. Why do you?
You fell off. I didn't. Why do I? I mean, that was the last thing I heard.
Yeah, blanked out.
Why did your view change? And don't just say the science. Go into detail.
The system, how everything works together. Sunrise, sunset, observations, eclipses, you name it. Things don't work on flat Earth.
A solenoid eclipse?
The 10% of eclipses that occur, sure, it's still explained. And you can't.
Did you just say solenoid eclipse?
That's
That's
where both the sun and the moon are above the horizon
Thank you.
during the eclipse.
Sean, have you ever observed curvature?
Yes, every day.
Observe it. Where?
Where? I want to see it.
What?
Where do you observe?
Where can I?
Now, if you guys haven't been to 24/7, it is insanely ridiculous now. It's not even the old school guys, because they split like 3 different times. But the reality is that now there's like the trolls who want to be cool are there, so they just basically talk shit and really just crap it up for the flat earthers that were around trying to have conversation. So be prepared if you ever go there. So this is next. Like I've said, I'm gonna fucking whiz through these. I don't really want to have this conversation. Now this one is going to be about 5 minutes, but it's going to be the main reason for this recording being aired, and in the experiment that B-Ball did for me, and we will be watching. And I want to remind you, you know when we talk about up, space, etc., we get yelled at? Well, Doxia keeps repeatedly talking about her start in flat Earth and all this stuff with space and NASA, and used to be a quote-unquote fangirl of NASA. She also claims to have an astrophysicist friend who did the math and says it's wrong, so why would she not know? You'll hear it.
Go to the sky, let's not go to space, let's stay on the ground. Can we do that, please?
That's where my observations are from, sure.
Yes, not the sky. So, when you're watching a boat disappear over the horizon, what is your opinion?
Say it again. The boat, what?
When you watch a boat disappear over the horizon, what is your opinion?
That's curvature.
And when you can zoom in with a high zoom camera and bring the boat into full view, what is your opinion?
If you have an image and we're seeing obstruction and you can bring it back in and lose that obstruction, I would love to see that. But that's not what's seen.
There are plenty of examples of that occurring.
Do you have a source? I've been looking for a long time. At no point.
There are countless videos that you can do, and you can go to an ocean and do it yourself.
Correct. But I've yet to see one that would be where they zoom in, or half zoom, I guess you would say, and there was obstruction and then brought back in without any obstruction. I've never seen that. I've never seen.
Well, unfortunately, you can't go without any obstruction because the waves themselves are a form of obstruction. Not to mention the atmosphere that you're looking through. Yes, excuse me for calling it atmosphere.
But atmosphere doesn't create obstruction. Or I guess you can say fog does.
Actually, atmosphere does create obstruction over long distances.
Well, that would be the right criteria. That it's not going to be the same conversation we're having about.
I want you to think for a moment of a fish tank. I'm going to give you a practical example that's just going to be easy to understand. Now you're going to fill that fish tank with a variety of fluids or liquids or gases or whatever you would prefer. You want to start with the most dense, most murky fluid. And you're going to keep pouring fluids layer by layer until you reach a fluid which is completely translucent or a gas which is completely translucent. Now, place a penny at the end of the fish tank and a camera at the other end on the outside of the glass. Make sure it's not too thick glass. As you're looking through the bottom layer, you're going to notice that it is difficult to see the object. Right?
Yep.
Now, strangely enough, we don't live on a world where the atmosphere is the same every single place that you go. Some places have more pollution, some have more debris, some are colder, some are warmer. Right?
Correct.
So when I'm observing a boat on a clear day, a cold day, it's a little bit different than when I observe it on a warm day. It's the same as, for a moment, we go back to the sky, just as an example, but not to stay there. On an airplane, some people will say they see actual horizontal curvature of the Earth. However, there are other days that those people don't see it, meaning it's an atmospheric phenomena. So we go back down to the Earth again, and back down to our little experiment, and we consider the ocean view. You are looking through the most densest layer of the atmosphere.
Well,
You are looking through
with the temperature
Yes.
and data that you would get from that day. We can just use the index of refraction and figure out why, and that would explain
refraction doesn't factor in everything.
What doesn't it factor?
Well, let's take a look at a lighthouse or a skyscraper or a windmill from far away. You're going to observe how, of course, number one, your vision isn't forever, it's not infinite.
Nope.
Number two, you're losing resolution as the image is further away from you.
True.
Number three, you stand, let's say, 6 feet tall. You move down, you're going to see less of the object, not because we're living on a sphere necessarily, but because, yes, the lower atmosphere is causing a form of obstruction. It's not a lot, but over distance, it adds up and blurs out the object, which is why when you zoom in with a high zoom camera, just let me finish what I'm saying.
Sorry.
When you zoom in with a high zoom camera, you end up with this incredibly pixelated, wavy mess of an image. And you end up with that because you're not traveling towards the object. You're simply zooming it, you're blowing it up, making the pixels bigger. You're not doing anything other than trying to increase the resolution, and that's not accounting for the atmosphere. It's not accounting for the debris in the air or any of that. And that does factor in.
Well, I would have to say that. I mean, again, I'd actually have to see obstruction and then it brought back in. Because again, I haven't. But when it comes to the index of refraction or refraction limits, that would mean that say elevation of 2,000 feet, I should still only be able to see so far, rather than it being the resolution of my eyes.
No, because you're looking on a different angle at this point.
But that
so
same
here,
is in
if you really
right?
want to know the limits of human vision, I can give you an experiment.
Sure, I'll take you.
Get a drone. Now you're going to have to keep using that drone unless you have money to afford a helicopter. So get a drone. Fly the drone with a piece of fishing line up over a bus. Keep going up until you can't see the bus anymore. If that's not possible with a drone, use a helicopter. When you can no longer see the bus, mark that point. Grab your fishing line and measure it physically. Now you know exactly how long it is that this situation is when the object disappears. Do the same with the house.
Can I use a digital altimeter to let me know how my altitude is, like that, or
if that is reliable to you? Yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify. Okay.
Depends on if you're skeptical regarding altitude. Some people are. So
I'm not quite.
If you're not, then that's fine.
Well, like I said, because I will do this experiment, and I want to make sure that works for you as well.
Then do it again with a house. when the house disappears from view. Then do it again with a lake. So you can figure out size of object correlating to when they disappear.
Now,
Then you should just be able to make a mathematical formula, and you should be able to factor in anything of how far you can actually see once you discover how far. And we're doing this by looking up. Remember, we're looking up. We're looking vertically for a reason, because you're looking through less density of atmosphere by looking up than you are looking across. Looking across, you're looking through more density of the lowest plane of the atmosphere.
Denser. But,
yes, you're looking through greater amounts of dense atmosphere than if you're looking straight up at like the sky.
Now, when you
from the sky to the ground.
But when you gain elevation with the drone, and at the point of where something would be, say, disappear, will we observe that disappearing from the bottom up?
No, you would just observe it. Well, actually, I have no idea how it would disappear. I've never seen it. It just gets smaller and blinks out of existence.
Well, that's what would happen. All right. Well, can you guys hear me? Hello.
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So, you guys got to hear it. Again, it's very wishy-washy because that's how the conversation went. But here's the kicker to this, and I'm going to show you guys B-Ball's test with his drone for me, and it's actually really cool. I actually realized I can actually get a lot of data out of it, and I'm going to explain what I want to do with it. But there's a kicker to this, and I'm not sure if anyone caught it, and I just want to see if anyone caught the issue with this whole thing. Anybody? Not that it's a flat Earth idea, but there's an actual issue with the claim and the test.
I'll be honest, I wasn't listening. Yeah, I was fighting on chat. So,
and I didn't hear it clearly because my my feed was cutting in and out.
Brian, your excuse?
I don't have one. I just want to know what your takeaway from it was.
Okay, perfect. All right, so here's the kicker. For one, there is no possible way All right, I have no idea if this works. Let me know if I'm back, because everything just went apeshit on my computer, and I just had to start everything over. So let me know if you guys hear me, and see if I can get this back going again. And I do apologize for that. If you guys are still out there, let me see if I can get this going again. Fuck. And I know that dog's in the background, so I do apologize on that as well.
Cannot hear you on YouTube, bro.
God damn it, now you can.
We heard you for a second, but then we stopped.
Yeah, I'm trying to get all my shit back together. I just had a blue screen of death incident, so.
What happened there?
Okay, so about a year ago, I did what's called an overclocking. Overclocking is Hang on, I don't know what the hell that is. Channel X, what's up? I don't think I've ever talked to you before.
Yeah, we've talked before.
Oh, okay. Okay. I know the voice now. I know the voice.
There you go.
All right. How you doing?
Yeah, we've been on camera as well.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, damn. Yeah. Okay.
Remember that?
Yeah, the voice is really
that was good. That was a good afternoon. That was.
Just rang a bell. I know exactly who it is now.
Yeah, it took me this long to get back into doing this.
I don't know why you came back.
Insanity.
Yeah, exactly.
Jose. I plead insanity.
Exactly. Jose, so what I did about a year ago is I overclocked my computer. Overclocking is where you make your computer work harder than the settings allow. So basically, you're taking the default settings off and making your computer bust its ass. Problem is if you don't do it just right, all hell breaks loose on your computer. So I'd say
okay.
Every month or so, my computer just starts shutting off on its own randomly. I get a nice little blue screen.
Yeah, just overloads, everything coming together and shit. All right,
yeah.
I got you.
So if I remember correctly, we got through all the great Doxia conversation, and yeah, Jose, it was a shit show. When she talks, her goal is to make you sound stupid. And that's all she does, because it's just all blah blah blah.
But who is she? Where'd she come from?
Hang on 1 second. All right, we're back.
Is this Jose or Fish Guy? You two sound an awful lot alike.
No, this is Jose. Jose Flip.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't allow Fish on my panel.
Stop being racist. That's Jose.
That Fish Guy was a.
So what? Hey,
Fish Guy is not allowed here.
Okay, so Jose,
Fish Guy.
What the fuck happened with Team Skeptic and Fight the Flat Tits?
I don't know.
I don't know what the fuck happened. I went to the chat and I threw a couple comments on trolling, like, "Hey, dude, like you should throw a disclaimer, like that's just your opinion." When they say, "All right, so this is what's up," whatever. I mean, they do this roundup. All right, to round up the flat earther, say everything was wrong. Everything was wrong. He didn't present any claims, and he did that. I said, dude, you should put a disclaimer. That's your opinion, because I heard him making some points, and you guys are trying to make him look stupid and dumb, And they go like, "Oh, like fuck you," like. I mean, they just went off on me. Like, you don't tell me what to do and what to say. Like, what we say is right, and we always right. We're never wrong. Or I don't know, some kind of bullshit. And I was just poking and trolling in a healthy mode, like I do in the chats. And they took it so personal and so serious. And I kept throwing little pieces of wood to the fire, and they just got out of control. I go like, holy shit, man, they're so emotional into this shit.
Yeah.
If they lose flat, they will lose the money. That's all they are here for. The money, pretty much.
So. I didn't know about this, and I was listening to you had like a 16-minute live stream when you were talking about this, and I was like, man, like I was like, what the hell did they say? So I'm going back, and I went to the last thing. I think it was on Fight the Flat Earth, but like I didn't realize, like, man, because I don't watch them or listen. It really is a circle jerk. That it's like by far the most homoerotic shit I've ever heard in my life. Like, sometimes it happens here where, like, somebody will go on this long rant of just unnecessary comments, but, like, the whole time, it's just like, I got you hard. No, I got you hard. No, I got you hard. It's weird.
Yeah.
So fucking weird.
I mean, I could have taken the advice. They said, like, get the fuck out of here on my channel and go do your shit in your channel. But they had to also attack my channel and my format. They say, oh, go back to that's why your show is not successful, and it's garbage, and it's nothing. You got nothing there, and it's gonna die or something. They were just stepping all over on my shit. I said, like, dude, really? When I got one of the most honest open panels out there, equal opportunity. So they were just trashing my show. I said, okay, people is gonna listen to you guys,
They seem to mess up and forget this one major point. They came to YouTube to make money. You're streaming because you enjoy it, and you saw an opportunity to stick a finger in Nathan's butt.
Okay. So B-Ball for Life in the chat says that Team Skeptic did. He posted an apology. He did kind of apologize today.
Well, I'll say this: Team Skeptic of that whole group is the most honest, most realistic. I've had when I was a flat earther, I had conversation with him, and I always said, and I said this when I had first talked to him a few times. He's chill. He's a perfectly chilled person to talk to in a live stream or in just off air.
Yeah.
But that's that ding and all that
It's
crap.
when they
it's
when they get to get
But here's the thing.
It's a shtick. Yeah.
But here's the thing. But Team Skeptic is very. This is an entertainment show. This is my shtick. Like he's very open about why he's here.
very clear. Yep. Yeah.
Where I've heard Fight the Flat Earth say numerous times, "I just want to help people." No, you don't.
Well, Craig's modus operandi, his entire goal is to kill Flat Earth and make it look as ridiculous and as stupid as possible.
No.
That's just his channel.
He's just trying to make money. He's for the money. That's it. Period. He have done it. He have said it in the comments
Here's the
section.
thing. Here's the problem. It's just like the oil companies. He's not going to put himself out of business. Just like Nathan isn't going to put himself out of business. And I put them both on the same page. They are the same person. One is just been here longer. That's it.
And I think me and Sean, you and myself are I mean, believe it or not, are taking down Flat Earth. We single-handedly. We are open civil discussions because this is where people is able to be heard and present their points. And a lot of people is just dropping like flies, disappearing from the scene and being more humble, being more honest in their approach. Because that's the whole idea. You don't go to make a one-on-one debate and yell at each other, and at the end, I won, and go nowhere. We do civil, open discussions and try to get to the bottom shit. Just kind of, chill in a chill, laid back mode.
I realized just
mostly civil.
Yeah, well, I realized that debating is pointless. It's literally not going to get anywhere.
What you mean? We can't have issues like bringing on 33 UC to sit there and yell. Let's see, Sandy Hook was a hoax the whole time.
Oh, I won't even entertain that.
Yeah, that won't be entertaining. Yeah.
That's why Pete Shea's not here.
Sean G, can I give a shout out real quick? Can I give a shout out?
Aaron's talking.
I wonder if it's like T-Rex. If we don't acknowledge him, if he won't continue.
Hold on, it's a good one. Shout out to Jose for like 24 hours there. When Nathan talks about housekeeping, Jose was doing house cleaning. He was taking out the trash on all the shows that he was on, whether it was Globe side.
What the hell are you talking about?
Both side. No. Jose, it's really inspiring to hear a guy actually speak true and say on all sides of the argument.
Well, no, I agree with that part, but like you're sounding as if you're talking about a situation.
Shout out to Jose JG Gonzalez for doing that.
Good shout out. Thanks for the shout out for that. That's good. I was going to say I think the difference between you two guys and everybody else is you are flat earthers, so you have a connection. So you understand
a perspective, if you will.
Perspective. There you go. That I don't have, and that no one has. The flat earthers
they have actual perspective.
Exactly, you have actually been there.
Yeah,
so
I'm quadlingual.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's more to have that gives you that balance, and that's why you are the way you are, both of you.
But here's the
and
problem:
you each have their own quality, and it's really good.
Here's the problem, though: when a flat earther gets cornered fast, they don't like it. They don't like it a lot at all, and I probably hear more shit talking from flat earthers than I ever did from a Glober or flat earthers that I disagreed with. It's weird, but at the same time, I know that what I'm saying isn't wrong. So what they're doing is dishonest. I'm sorry. So in a sense, I don't know if Jose's felt this, but it's not I'm not happy with results. Like there are very few truthers out there, honest truthers, and it's sad.
Yeah, I feel the same. Now I got a soft spot for minorities and flat earthers and some people that cannot express themselves really articulated in big groups, because I'm kind of one of those. So I feel the soft spot for the flat earthers, and I really do. And me questioning everything also, questioning the official narrative doesn't make me a flat earther, but makes me have the soft spot for for the truthers, for the guys that really want to ask questions and don't know how to express themselves. So I kind of side by side with them, try to push him and help him out. Like, just let it out, guys, let him speak, So I don't know.
I think you said this like a few minutes ago. One of the main things that I think is the difference between myself and you and the rest of the Globers, I guess you would say, is I don't need anyone to leave Flat Earth. As long as you're willing to question Flat Earth as well, a conversation can spark and a conversation can be had for hours. It doesn't matter. But once you lose that honesty, that's when all the shit talking starts, and no one gets anywhere because you're not providing evidence when you shit talk.
And someone spurs up the hangout.
And speaking as a hardline Globe proponent, by all means, question. I mean, that's the nature of science, is questioning things. And if I don't support science, if I don't support what I feel is a genuine search for truth, then I'm nothing but a hypocrite. I'm not only a hypocrite, but I'm an idiot. So by all means, question. However, if someone's going to make conjectures and assertions, back it up.
100%.
Yeah, Jose
100%.
makes a real good, concise example of this. He says recently he's been saying, get to the point on both sides. Stop it with this freaking go around. We're in a discussion. Make your point.
Well, here's the realization of this whole discussion on both sides. All the live streams that go on during the day. Here's the reality of it. Fucking doesn't matter. We're not even doing science. We're philosophy. What do you call it?
It's meaningless.
No, it does matter.
It's
It does
philosophical
matter.
science.
It does matter, Sean, but you're right.
Hang on. I'm sorry. You guys are right. It does matter. What I meant by it doesn't matter is we're not actually having a conversation of changing anything. We're not having a conversation that's going to change anything. Hey, it could spark something and someone could hear something, and then 5-6 years down the line, something happened. All we're really doing is passing information to each other. Some of us take it in and try to understand more about it. Some of us run our own paths and play Dungeons and Dragons, I guess. I don't know, but
A solid shout out to Arwen there.
Yeah, I think there's become, like, let's just say 2 camps. You've got the Oakley camp and you've got
3.
the Jose camp, among others.
There's the flat Earth apologetics.
And here's the problem.
Flat Earth apologetics like yourself.
Yeah, let's just say, here's the problem. Over in Nathan, they're just all a bunch of echo chambers sitting there talking to each other about ballers. And over here, at Jose's, we're all just sitting there talking about flatties. And Jose, it really is trying his best. I can hear it to bring in both sides to his
I'm
show.
not sure if you
Nathan,
listen
Nathan
very
is
often,
not.
but I've heard Jose, and I know I heard myself because I just did it. We talk about both. We have issues with both, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm not.
Here's my point: is why Jose's show is irresistible. Is because he attempts so hard to actually bring it into a debate, whereas at Nathan's
discussion,
you're
missing the point. It's literally a place that isn't driven by a bias. Jose thinks it's a globe. I think it's a globe, but I want to have that conversation. I want to have the talk, but I'm not trying to push anyone to anything. Let's just talk. That's all I want.
The biggest thing is if you go into Globebusters, it's jammed with mods. You go into Rob Skeever's hangout the other night, it's jammed with mods, and there's no discussion. So the chats that have you know what? I will give Nathan Oakley credit that he doesn't have his chat full of mods. You have to really, really troll him before you'll get put out. You have to really try hard. I'm
really glad that changed. There was a while where that was not the case.
Yeah,
90% of the Flutter channels, 90% of the Flutter channels, they got the same mods. They got the Cat and Beast, the Ace McClouds, and they are killers. They don't like anybody that disagree with them, or they throw a little bit of a troll comment, or you're a liar, or no, it's a globe. That's it. You're done. They just eliminate you, whack you in the spot.
Yeah, it's odd too because like I was over at 24/7, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows this isn't new news to anyone. I think how 24/7 split up into like 3 different groups.
really?
One being the crazy human. I call him Shipple. He took over the original 24/7. Karen B went on her own, and then 24/7 2.0. Well, 24/7 2.0 is like every flat earther that was like in the background during the main 24/7 server, but wasn't cool enough in the cool gang yet, and now they are, because now there's all these new mods, and they're all like, "Fuck you, Glober! You do this, and you suck in word salad," and it's. See, you guys didn't hear it in between all those little clips, but it kept happening over and over again. And I usually get kicked around that time because I'm like, hey, you disrespect me, I'm going to disrespect you back. And yeah, it's the troll in Flat Earth is terrible now. It's like I wouldn't even become a Flat Earther if it was like this.
I think people respect Jose's show. Both sides. Both sides respect Jose's show. But there's no respect over at Nathan's, because even when a flat earther comes in and maybe says one thing wrong with
Spurs is a persona non grata at
Travis got
Oakley's.
Travis got kicked off of Nathan's for just bringing up something. And,
Arwen's been out. I think I don't see him anymore. I don't see Spurs anymore. He behaves the same way to flat earthers.
Spurs was essentially kicked off for his pressure and temperature thing.
Oh, yeah, I know, but at least he's still able to speak on Alan's show, the after show of Jose's, and even on Jose's. At least he's able to speak, and I think that's just.
Spurs?
Great,
I don't think Spurs should be allowed to speak anywhere.
I know, but Jose thinks differently.
And I'll tell Jose to it right now. Jose, he is so full of shit. He makes this whole thing a joke.
It brings
Spurs is I mean, he got some points if he take a humble approach and an honest approach, but I haven't seen him doing that.
Show me.
Jose, here's the thing about Spurs.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing about Spurs, Jose, is when he comes on, when you let him on, or even on the after show, the response from your side is more intriguing than what Spurs says. I'm not listening to what Spurs says, but just the go search here, look at that, just. Do you understand what I'm saying, right?
I understand. Spurs bring the best and the worst out of everybody, bro. Spurs got skills.
Yeah, he really is very, very skilled at bringing the worst out in people, to be honest. Most of it's the worst. And it's just out of frustration that they try to give him some information just to shut him up.
That's how the audience learns.
I refuse.
Right?
I won't have that conversation with him ever again. I can give a shit else I ever do.
So to give you an idea...
Here comes Spurs into a room. He says something completely entirely wrong. It says you can't demonstrate that. We provide him a demonstration. He acts like he doesn't see it and moves on to his next point.
Oh, no. My favorite part about Spurs...
It's so ridiculous.
My favorite part is he'll cite a paragraph as a source, and in the very next paragraph, it'll debunk everything he said.
Oh, we call that the Stonjo effect.
And then he'll just continue on that same rant.
Yeah, but the cool thing is cool. Was that Brian that was just speaking?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
You've been around long enough, Aaron, that you need to start listening to people's voices and knowing who's talking.
But what I'm saying is, Brian.
I know he hears me. He just talks.
Brian will make.
Aaron, I agree with your point. It is good for the audience to get all the information that Spurs winds up getting out of us. It's just frustrating to no end that Spurs refuses to listen to it.
It's like a telemarketer. It's like a telemarketer who succeeds in getting their monthly goal of sales, but what they do is they annoy 1,000 people in the process.
It's like Girl Scout cookies.
Aaron, I get your point, and I agree with it. It's wonderful for the audience.
No, I want to elaborate on it just a little bit.
Aaron, I know you hear me. I know you hear me. Stop.
Damn it, son.
I know. I'm not gonna let you just rant, man. Wait. Watch this.
I want to say one thing. One thing. Come on, Jose would let me speak.
4 beers and a joint deep.
Jose would let me speak.
How many beers deep are you? How many beers have you had, Aaron? How many beers have you had?
4.
Thank you.
A joint? Okay. The point that Brian made was Spurs would say some shit, and you guys, the ballers would give an explanation and even a link to a demonstration, but there will be 4 or 5 more different ones presented to Spurs. So it's like a diversity of, look, go here, go there, go here, go there, Spurs. And to the audience. So what I'm saying is there is more. It wasn't just a one answer thing, you know.
Spurs
I'll
is
give you
completely, Aaron.
I'll give you my experience.
Spurs is completely useless.
Yeah, I know, but it's not for Spurs. I'm talking about me, right? When I listen to that.
I'll give you my experience. I came into the chat. Pip was in there, and she's got that lovely Scottish accent. So we engaged in just idle chit chat type of thing. Where are you from in Scotland, etc., etc., etc. And Spurs came in, and immediately he was like, "Are we done with the chit chat? Are we done with the chit chat? Will you see gravity? Can you please explain?" And he wanted to get to it. Right? He has no idea of just getting in to a regular, normal human conversation with people. He just wants to get straight to the jugular.
And then the second he gets cornered, he goes, "And I'll pass this to the next flat earther." And he just leaves someone high and dry.
We know that. We know that.
Well, I love that. It's like, well, if you don't agree with me, just ask Travis. Travis, you agree with me, don't you? Just over and over again.
It's he's. I don't think he's able to. I'm really convinced. I don't think he's able to have a regular conversation. I've never seen him have one.
I'm guessing
I've had
he
one
used to.
one-on-one.
I'm guessing he used to be able to, and he's so deep in his what I call snake oil cells. He can't back. He's done. He can't get out of it. I think he's married to it.
He's been smoking his own weed.
And again,
Spurs.
And I'm telling you now, Spurs. He knows it's not flat. It's not. This isn't a situation of misunderstandings. So? Oh, I know for a fact he knows it's flat. He knows it's flat. This is a game to him, 100%. I'm willing to bet everything on it.
Actually, something interesting. I've been talking to one of my friends who speaks quite a bit of Russian. I'm trying to figure out if I can get him on here and have a conversation with Spurs in Russian to gauge how much Russian he actually knows.
He won't speak Russian. We know he does. We've seen it. But the thing is, he won't do it here.
I work with Russians on a daily basis, and I'm helping one learn, tweak his English. He's actually fluent in English now, and now he's trying to teach his girlfriend. So I'm helping them, helping her mainly. And hell, I could drag his ass in here. He lives in Russia. He was born there.
No, guys, there's uploads of Spurs speaking Russian and teaching. It's like he's what do you call it? Teaching.
He's offering services as a translator and teacher.
Yeah. But he speaks Russian. We know he speaks Russian. Put it this way: to this day, if you show Spurs an image of Spurs, he'll continue to deny it. That's not me.
And then he gets other people on his side. He had Ranty saying that he wasn't. That's not Spurs. Spurs isn't black. It's like, we know Spurs is black.
We know that's Spurs. There's information out there that I know Spurs doesn't like out there. Like, for real. But yeah, he's. I'm telling you right now, this is a game. It's not the same thing at all. This isn't like a flat earther who really wants it to be flat. I'm telling you right now, he's selling the shit out of it, and he's laughing.
Well, let's get to a topic. What do we got going?
There you go. Yeah, it's enough talk about people.
All right.
Chills. I've looked up more stuff and researched more stuff based upon what you have said on Jose's, even Sean's. Arguing with a flatty on Jose's channel. It's just it's a driver to just go research for yourself and contemplate for yourself, if on both ends, actually, because and that's what I think the point is by Jose allowing at least a knucklehead on there to
Aaron, do me a favor. Can you get some Kleenex, because you got a lot of shit on your nose right now?
I'm just saying I appreciate what y'all do. I mean, come on.
No.
I'm just saying, can
You're
we do this in private?
You're very complimentary tonight.
We're not supposed to. Me and Jose, I thought we agreed that we weren't going to say what Aaron does in the back chats. But damn, Aaron it's too obvious, man. Stop.
Okay, so the topic today is
open topic. Actually, let's
moving on.
Actually, I wanted to talk about, because the big thing to me, in my opinion, topic is this whole atmosphere causes obstruction. and this was the conversation I was having with Grayson. I'm not sure if anyone, as much as if you guys heard all of it. And I was going to play. I was actually in the process of playing B-Ball's upload that was going to. Let me get there right now. Show exactly what Grayson was describing in her explanation of this test. Which, that's what it was. I didn't get to tell you. Damn. Okay, so this whole drone elevation resolution experiment, there's an issue with it that just voids it altogether. You guys ready? The drone camera is not our eyes. So it does not see how our eyes see. Therefore, how does flying a drone to altitude when its object goes out of sight do a damn thing?
Could you repeat what the parameters were of this experiment?
Okay, so she said, get a drone or expensive helicopter. Literally, that's what she said. Gain elevation on a fixed, your camera pointed straight down on a fixed point, say a house, a car, and gain elevation. Her idea is that as you gain elevation, the more atmosphere, the less resolution. Here's a kicker. This is all explaining boats being obstructed by curvature. This is why. This is the whole explanation for it. So she said, do this experiment so you can understand how the human eye works.
No, we're getting into angular resolution, and when you're talking about obstruction by the horizon, it's not a matter of angular resolution. That's
the whole
otherwise
convergent line and.
Yeah, I mean, with a good enough lens system, you can see, whether a quarter is heads or tails, from 3 miles up.
Which would make it nowhere near like our eyes. We didn't quite get. People didn't quite get that high up. I'm getting there right now. I'm getting his YouTube channel pulled up.
Well, to be fair, if the majority of people knew how the human eye worked, they would not say that composite images aren't allowed to be used because your eyes work in composite.
Do they?
Yeah. Your vision is nothing but a bunch of rods and cones that are stimulated by the incoming photons that transmit signals that have to travel across your optic nerve, be reassembled into usable information by your occipital.
Bullshit. How do you know? How do you know? You don't know what's inside the back of my eye.
Not yours.
Yeah, basically it's biological.
Don't make me Jose you.
Biological
we already
pixels.
have the rumpus. Don't make me Jose you. That's bullshit. You don't know how.
We've got biopixels.
All right. So first off,
and also you don't know how my brain interprets that.
Yeah, and impossible to know. So guys, before I start this, here's the link in the chat to B-Ball for Life. Please go subscribe and check him out. He's really starting to come into his own, so to speak, with his experiments and what he wants to do, showing that Earth is a globe. And thank you, B-Ball. I appreciate you doing that. His drone, Demonic, got I think it was 1,634 feet, 1,600 something feet. I'm about to pull it up right now.
Brian, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to left hook you, but is that the same way a dog's eye works? Or how about a bird or a fish?
What?
Right? It was a real good.
I was not listening. Aaron, I wasn't listening to you. What'd you say? I was making a sandwich.
Oh,
thank God it wasn't a
I
fucking
didn't mean to
salad
left
this
hook you
time.
there, but is that the same way a dog's eye works, or a bird, or a fish?
For the most part, yeah.
So
they have different. They have different. They have different components in their retinas, but a lot of them work the same way.
Is that me cutting out, or is?
Yeah, it's you, definitely.
Yep.
You should just stop. Can't understand you at all.
Okay, let's check out this footage.
Okay, so I'm going to periodically stop it because it's the best way to do it. I can show you guys why. So basically, one of the main things that I took from this is I don't think she understood what she was asking of this experiment, because I'm not sure if you guys heard it 1,000 times. She kept telling me to stop talking about looking up. She was like, stop it, don't do it again. It's quite odd. All right, so
because space observations support a ball Earth.
All right, so this is what I did. I don't know if this was exactly how you should do it or not, but as I was watching this, I decided to stop it and periodically take screenshots. The reason I took these screenshots was basically to basically show what was happening. Let me see, give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. I will share this one. For instance, so the cars we were just looking at in the video. There you go.
At the bottom of your screen, is that an icon for bangamidget.com?
Excuse what? What the fuck did you just say? I don't know what you just said, and I don't know if I should be offended or not. No, I don't have that website anymore. I deleted it. Okay, so I pretty much hit every car, parking lot, school bus in the picture in this video, and I every time I paused it, I took pixel measurements to see how much they were changing. So I got a lot of data. I don't think I want to say it all here. I think I'll probably release it to my Discord and my website, guys. There's a new website that I'm working on. It's complete shit. Doesn't make any sense. It's jumbled up, and I'm still learning. So when that comes coherent and legible, I will actually tell you guys where to find that in my description, but don't laugh at me. It's work in progress. But my plan for this is I want to eventually, show this, basically show my data and be able to essentially explain exactly how resolution and perspective and angular resolution, all these things work based on this. And I feel like I can, because I have my altitude, I have my objects, me gaining altitude would be the variable, right? Or the gaining of altitude. I'm sorry, B-Ball did this, not me.
Altitude would be the variable, yes.
So
distance, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, the main reason I brought this up is what can we do with this footage? And again, this isn't it. Let me get back to it, because again, his again, I think damn, I went completely wrong one. I know why. Hang on. There's too many things up. Hang on. There it is. So, are we watching that one? Yes, we are. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm just gonna let it play through now that you guys have an idea what I was doing. So basically, I think I had 6 times I paused it, took down the data, so to speak, and plan to use that to come to a conclusion of something. But there's one thing I noticed also in this whole situation. There's nothing being obstructed. Yes, some clouds come in, but not obstructing anything. It makes it the resolution a little fuzzy and harder to see, but again, not obstruction. And again, goddamn, thank you, B-Ball, for this. I really did appreciate it. He actually asked him for this like 2 nights ago, and he had it ready yesterday. Just couldn't upload it to Discord.
And I don't see anything disappearing from the bottom up.
Not at all. And here's the best part about it. She said you had to do this numerous times with cars, buses, houses. Why? You have them all right here.
Ideally, somewhere in that frame would have been a 1 meter by 1 meter square cardboard or something that's marked off in divisions to show resolution.
Ah. So what would I say? What would I need?
Well, if a person were to take, say, a 1 meter squared piece of cardboard, paint it yellow, and then make some division lines on it, say every 10 centimeters, thin division line. That way you could get a good idea of the resolution at that altitude. And find out,
You're saying in real time, or in the experiment itself, you mean?
During the experiment itself, that way you could see how much space is contracted into a single pixel.
Well, I can tell you right now because I used that parking lot, or I think right now so everyone knows this is max height of the Mavic 2, 1,637 feet. Thank you for your flight. Enjoy the landing. So if we had a, say, designated area, the size of that area, that'd be exactly what you're saying, right?
Well, no, just place a marker out there of a known size, so that when it does reach max altitude, you can look and say, okay, that what was a meter is now taking up a total of 4 pixels, so that's 1 pixel per half meter resolution.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So the only control, I guess you would call it, I would have on this whole thing would be here. Those parking lot, those spots. I know those spots are 7 feet wide, and I can tell you that lane those cars in are 105 feet long. That one parking lane.
Hey, Sean, if B-Ball for Life owned one of those cars, it will give you the measurements on the website, and therefore you'd have your control.
I can probably find out what kind of
cars. There you go. That would work.
Okay, what about this then? Top left, it's a little school bus. I mean, how many different makes and models are those?
More than you.
A lot. A whole lot.
Okay. Let's try this. How about if I pushed it to 1080? And see if we can get anywhere. Because I think 178 feet is the closest we're going to get to it.
Well, and by having like a 1 meter square, painted up and laid out on the terrain, that would be a known value that nobody could argue with.
That's a Honda, not Honda, a Ford Focus. I don't know.
No, that's not a Ford Focus. Bonnet is too small, too short.
Well, that definitely looks like a Dodge, right? In that one. But yeah, we don't have enough.
I will say this, but I will say something. But before I say it, it is beautiful footage. But I know exactly what they will throw back at you.
What's that?
Because you've went straight up and you're only going to 1,637 feet. You are not looking through enough of the accumulation of the denser air at ground level to start the obstruction from happening.
Well, how high would you have to go?
Extremely high.
Well, then can we just use something smaller?
Depending on the camera that's on the drone, I don't know anything about it. Potentially what you would do would be keep it pointed on a building that is not directly underneath you, but at a further distance away. So out at half a mile, if the camera can pick it up, and that way you'd have a larger accumulation of this air that you're looking through.
But that doesn't work. It doesn't work for me because I have an observation of 48 miles to the beach and then 65 miles to the horizon, and it was at 2,000 feet. I shouldn't be able to see that far then under these guides because, I mean, at 1,600 feet you can barely see cars. Meaning
Again, if you zoom in, if the camera has the ability and can zoom in, you will see the cars in their entirety as perspective lays out.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
The plane truth want to come in. I shared the link with him.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, just heads up for anybody. If I put the link in the chat originally, you can always share it to anyone out there. Only time I would rather you not is if you get the link from the bunker. That's the only time I wouldn't want you to.
Yeah, that's why I shared it, because you posted it in the regular link. So
yes, yeah. Thank you. What's up,
TPT's
Sean?
waiting.
What's up, Travis?
Hey, how's it going, Sean?
Hello. What ho? How's the mic? Okay.
Crappy mic.
Your
Try
mic is
again.
awful tonight.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm telling you, you need to add a honk to that.
I had next with a set of honkers.
One of them nights, huh?
So John G, the fish guy have made a few appearances in the past few days. He made like 2 appearances. He was actually in my show, and he was in one of the after shows today. It was cool to hear him. Fish guy. He's cool. He's all right.
I'm so confused. You're a fish guy or the other fish guy? That random dude?
No, just fish guy. Fish guy.
Okay.
The guy that they say he sounds like me. That fish guy.
Oh God, I just try to forget about that shit. Is he here? Is he here? If he's here, I'm gonna boot somebody.
No. It's me, Jose. Yeah, fish guy. I don't know where he at. I think he only joined in the mornings.
Good.
So the
He usually
topic,
goes fishing at night.
Yeah, the topic, Shanji, is atmosphere does not cause obstruction, right? Is that the topic? If I heard you right.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Have you guys heard of the Travis band?
Say again?
Montreal, what's up, brother?
What's up, everybody?
What up, sir?
Have you guys heard of my new? Hey, Sean. Hey, Jose.
Hey, sure.
You guys heard of my new saying?
Go ahead, Montreal. What is it?
The Travis band.
No. I like the Aqua band. Travis has been using the Aqua band, and I like that.
That's good too. Yeah.
But do any of these things explain the observations that we see?
Worst song.
That's my question.
The Maxi band.
Yeah. So y'all know. So y'all have actually. I'm sure everyone in this room has actually heard Aqua's hit single.
Who?
Aqua. It was a band that was really popular in the late '90s, early.
I'm a Barbie girl.
Yeah,
and a Barbie.
Oh my God, you guys.
No, I'm serious. There was a band called Aqua. That was their hit song.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, I've heard that song.
Yeah. I wish I had never heard anyone say that again.
Was that them that sang the Barbie? Was that them, the Aqua band? I'm
that was Aqua.
girl in a Barbie world.
If I get a copyright strike for that, I swear I'm taking you all down with me.
I'm sorry, Sean. That's fucked up.
That's right. I'm openly saying right now, if I get taken a copyright strike for that Barbie song, I'm porn bombing Jose.
Come on, Bobby, let's go party.
I'm serious. You guys are fucking. You guys say it enough, it will happen. One's also Bebo. That second one's the 4-minute one, right? Oh, and you guys may not have heard it in that little clip when she was talking about that experiment, but she originally wanted me to tie fishing line to it to measure the altitude.
Oh yeah, she wanted the exact distance in fishing line.
The obverse of that is you're saying let's just do math, right?
No, we can do this in a simple way. And this is what I tried to get an answer from Travis about, but he wouldn't accept it because it's not looking at the ground. If it's the accumulation of the atmosphere that is causing this obstruction, why are we still able to see things like the ISS and planes and everything else as they transverse the sky? Because accumulatively, we are looking through more than 3 miles of atmosphere when we look up at a plane as opposed to looking out horizontally at sea level.
They and them. I just can't believe that you knew the name to the Aqua Band song.
I'm very old man.
I
I've
will
known
boot
a
you,
so
motherfuckers. I don't care. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you believe. I don't care anything.
I just thought it was funny. He knew that one before we did.
I know. Thanks. Thank you. In the chat, Dave, I have never had anyone actually call before, so I have no idea how that's gonna pop up in here or sound. So good luck with that.
Sean, actually about that, can you mute us from the outside? I'll explain it to you.
Go ahead. Yeah, okay, no worries. Okay, I don't. Okay.
They and them just say, I think called out Travis.
But no, I think he. Well, actually, I think he did, didn't he? I'm not sure. Anyway. Damn it! I had something I was gonna say and I completely forgot.
you were talking about your fishing line and that you wanted it measured.
Yeah, she said that the only way to successfully do it would be with fishing line hanging from it, and that would be how you measure. I asked if, like a digital, like we saw on the screen, was it good enough? And she said something that I didn't even believe. There are people out there that don't believe in altitude.
Hey, what? Travis, Travis, what on your next observation, it would be awesome if you were showing atmospheric obstruction and playing "It's a Barbie World, It's a Barbie Girl, It's a Barbie World." That'd be badass.
He was warned.
So there's people that don't believe in altitude at all?
I think the digital altitude readings, I think it was.
But there are people who honestly don't believe that our measurements from any instrument are the measurements that we claim them to be. Like, they don't believe in altitude or distance.
Well, unless it sounds good to them, and it to them makes them believe that they are debunking what they believe is a globe lie. If that made any sense?
Not a bit.
Good. Talk amongst yourself for 3 minutes. I have to answer this call.
Well, I think there are more flat earthers in this panel than Globers. I see Aaron, I see Montreal, I see the plain truth, and I say, oh, on Page Shields, yeah, on Page Shields is here, so it's more flat earthers than the Globers. Boom.
What? Since when?
We're always outnumbered, Jose.
When did I go flat?
On Page Shields has been a flat earther for the last week.
Hey, welcome, Shills.
8 days. It's only been 8
welcome
days.
to the fold.
Welcome to the real side.
You better propose good arguments in favor of flat earth shields.
Yeah, troll and let troll, huh, Jose?
You know it.
Hey, Jose. You had a good show today, bro. I was dying to come on.
Yeah.
But I couldn't.
At the moon?
Yeah. You held their feet to the fire, bro, and you were fair. So don't let anybody think that you can't speak your piece. I came on, I gave them shit. Jose didn't say nothing. He let me talk. So you got something to say? Come on and say it.
I do. I try not to speak much in my own channel. As I say, I throw a little bit of wood to the fire. I light up the fuse and let it go boom. But I try to stay back most of the time.
What's good, peoples? How's the mic?
Yeah.
Matrix, you sound like you're really far away tonight. I'm actually a fan of that.
I had to take my Bluetooth off, so I'm on the phone now.
Plain truth also. A little low, but better. Plain truth.
That is better.
Yo, what's going on?
Dude, I'm so glad I'm not hearing you at 1,000 decibels. Good to see you, Matrix.
Hey, Matrix.
Hey, man, what's going on? I was having computer problems, man. Just figured that out. I'm back on.
The tables have turned.
Well, this happens occasionally. It's good times when that happens. We'll probably pick up a straggler or two on the Globe side eventually.
Absolutely.
I'm worth 3. I'm as good as 3.
I used to weigh as much as 2.
What is going on? What you guys think? I don't have too many flat earthers early in my show. Is it the time? The time slot is not the best for you guys?
Yeah,
Nighttime,
Jose.
I see more.
Yeah, you got it, man. Yeah, the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you go on later, it would be better for me personally. Yeah.
Yeah, during the weekdays it's a little rough. Like right now with my schedule shifting back to the way it used to be, I guess I can't come on until nighttime. And I'm a Glober, so.
Yeah, and Jose, you'll get the same folks that have that time off, during your 9 o'clock at my central time. You just get the same ones over and over. So mixing it up might not be bad, just seeing who comes on, what goes on. You've had some really, really good shows late at night. Remember that?
Yeah.
That means you have
planning on doing 1 or 2 more. Yeah.
The biggest problem with
I'm
that,
retired,
though, is
so
if
it
we
don't
switch
matter to
to
me.
midday. The problem is if we switch to midday, though, we lose a lot of our the British participants.
Yep.
I have an idea, Jose. Keep your morning show, but maybe you could add eventually in the future like an afternoon show or something, or an evening show.
Yeah, at least
I
2 or
enjoyed the
3
late
times
nights
a week.
personally.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times a week I can do night show. Yeah.
Yeah, and
More of a
especially
not like at night at Jose's or whatever, Jose's corner bar or whatever.
Jose's Cafe.
Sounds good, yeah.
Karaoke night, Jose.
So you're flat earther today, Jose?
No, I'm just me today. I'm just Jose.
you sound good,
Fish
man.
Man's
You
not
sound
here.
better. You feel better?
Oh, I feel better. I got that thing still on my chest. I'm kind of coughing it out, but I was horrendous for that 2 days. Yesterday I start healing up, and today I'm a lot better. Yeah.
Get that Mucinex in you, man. That'll just you get it right out.
Yeah, you sound a lot better than you did like 2 days ago.
He's on his deathbed trying to moderate a show.
Yeah, I was in bad shape, man. It was bad.
Gary, I'm not sure if I've ever heard you before. Curtis, I'm not sure if I've ever heard you before. Can both of you give a mic check so we know if we can hear you?
Hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, got you, Gary. Got you, Curtis. Cool.
All right.
Both coming through fine here, too.
Is the volume level okay?
A little bit on the
good.
loud side, but good. It's
Wow.
just a good strong signal.
I'll take it down a bit.
Now I seen Curtis on the chat, and I think Gary. But Gary, I'm not familiar with you. Are you like on the globe side, on the flat side, or where are you standing in this discussion?
Jose, we've spoken before.
We have, yeah.
Oh.
I'm just, yeah.
I recognize the angel now.
Come across too many people, man.
How y'all fellas doing this evening?
Don't blink.
Not bad.
We good.
Marvelous.
How are you doing?
Moderately
I'm
neato.
good. What? Is Sean in here?
He
He'll
has
be
to take
back in a
phone
minute
call.
or two. Yeah.
What are y'all speaking on?
Should be
Also,
atmospheric block.
Yeah, we were discussing it. Go ahead, Aaron.
Ostensibly, we've been discussing horizon obstruction, but really the topic's just kind of been bounced around a little bit.
Yeah.
Atmosphere does not cause blockage. What Sean said, or some blockage might not have been, been the word, but atmosphere does not cause obstruction. I think is what he said.
Yeah, I think to sum it all in a more solid way is when we see obstruction from the bottom up, the globe side says curvature, the flatter side got other alternatives like atmosphere causes it. But when they say atmosphere, it's like a broad, variety of factors that's what we're trying to break it down. The globe side is kind of easier. Oh, it's missing the half bottom up. It's curvature. That's it. So we're kind of in that neighborhood talking about it.
How do we know that that's not simply how it works? Like, Because remember, the floor is always going to be closer than whatever the sky is. You know what I'm saying? We don't really know what the limits of the sky is. So maybe that's why everything disappears bottom up. Bottom first.
Yeah,
Because the floor is always closer.
Jose addressed the atmosphere part, but the obstruction part is the difference between ballers and flatties, right? What does obstruction mean? You know, we can go into the Anthony Radley semantics, but so I think obstruction to me, when I'm looking visually out, like on Travis's videos or even Ranty's, whatever, obstruction is not being able to see something, whether it's from a curve or a physical thing or an atmospheric thing. What do you say, Jose? What is obstruction?
Well, if I'm looking at an object, 10-foot pole divided by colors, 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot by hardcore lines, if I see it getting far and far away from me, it should appear to get smaller and smaller and smaller in the distance until it just disappears uniformly. Now, when I'm seeing at this object and I keep getting away, getting smaller, but also disappearing from the bottom up, missing the bottom, there's something else going on besides just reducing in angular size due to perspective. So I call it curvature. I call it obstruction from the bottom up due to curvature. That's how I call it.
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah,
Jose, I have a question. Real quick.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Would you say that the sun is obstructed by the Earth?
No.
Only at night.
Good call, Trails.
No, I'm serious. Like, would you say that when the sun is setting, that it's obstructed by the Earth?
Oh, yeah. Yes, you would say it's needed. But usually when I talk to flat earthers and they want to say that when you see sunset, that's some form of perspective, I point out to them that perspective only speaks to what you see. It never speaks to what you don't see. So if it's obstructed, then it can't be perspective.
So do you guys say that the sun is always over the flat Earth?
From what I understand, that's the general consensus.
Yeah, but hold on. You can't say, do you guys say? You were talking specifically.
Okay, so Aaron, do you feel personally that the sun is always over the top of the flat Earth?
It could be, yes.
What is your opinion? Is it either is or it isn't? It can't kind of.
Aaron doesn't have a lot of opinions. Likes to play the could be card.
Hey, I'll throw out the medium there, right? The media. I'm in the middle. It could be. Why couldn't it?
Yeah, Aaron, do you want to give one of the other guys a chance? Maybe they can kind of specify a little better. It's more of a yes or no. Maybe the Plain Truth or Montreal or Matrix.
Yeah, very good, Jose. Good job.
Montreal, what do you think? Oh, the Plain Truth. Go ahead. You're muted. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that the sun is always over the surface of the Earth.
Always.
Yeah, where else is it going to go?
Okay.
Even
then
in
why
your
don't
model.
we always see it? How can it be obstructed by the Earth?
It's not obstructed by the Earth.
So what's it obstructed by?
Yeah, what's preventing you from seeing it?
Distance.
Well, distance is a factor in it, but distance doesn't obstruct the Earth.
And atmosphere, Travis?
Yeah. Distance does not obstruct the sun. It is the atmosphere exclusively.
So how far away do you have to be where you can't see it?
Yeah, I don't know, because we can't get to the sun to get.
Then how did you draw your conclusion?
Based on shorter observations with things that we can see on Earth, and then simply extrapolating that out to the macro scale.
Okay, so
guesswork.
Hold on, one at a time. One at a time, please.
How high up would you say the sun is?
Oh, I have no clue.
I asked him this question the other day. He didn't give me an answer.
I did give you an answer. It's no clue. I have no clue how high the sun is.
Then I don't know how you. I don't even know how you
answer, but No quantity.
Yeah, I don't even know how you come to your conclusion because you have no number.
It's called a wild guess.
Yeah,
Right.
that's not too terrible since a lot of your suppositions.
Right. Travis, can we
Yes.
go back to my question then to you, please? Would you agree that you start to, and according to your explanation,
No.
if somebody's standing on the beach with an eye level of 6 feet, that things start getting obstructed from approximately 3.5 miles?
No, I would have to go through extensive measurements with 3 and 4 different parties to get to that conclusion. So no.
Is 5,000 miles far enough away where you can you know to see the sun?
I'm not going to suppose something that I can't verify along those lines.
Yeah,
No.
I had to stand
well,
next.
let me put it like this.
Gary,
The
Gary,
distance from-
I hate to side by Travis on this one, but yeah, it would be a straw man if he tried to give you a distance, a height on the sun, because then you're gonna extrapolate and do the math and do all this debunking around that distance when it could be just a guess, you know, an educated guess.
That wouldn't be a straw man though, because if I can say if I'm in Australia and I'm in New York and I can't see the sun from Australia when I'm in New York, then that's World
You
War.
can
So that's not a
yourself. Like, yeah, stop doing that.
That's not necessarily
You
a
guys
straw
know
man.
that it's the distance of the sun multiple times, right?
That's not necessarily a straw man so much as it's closer to a red herring.
How so? If you're in New York,
He said,
and you're in
if I was,
Australia,
he goes, if
you
I was in
can't see the
Australia,
sun.
or if I was in London, or if I was building myself here, or strawmanning myself there.
But that's okay, yeah. You can use thought experiments, it's okay.
You can't see the sun from New York. If you're in New York, you can't see the sun from Australia. That's a fact.
Okay, sorry. I guess I was listening to someone else detract from your point by changing the subject and thought it was you for some strange reason.
Well, I'm not. I'm just telling you the distance from New York to Australia is about 5,000 miles. Since you can't see the sun from those two distances, it's 5,000 miles far enough.
Is there some videos of people in New York and Australia at the same time taking footage and talking to each other? This time is this date.
They can't see the sun at the same time, right, Jose?
Correct.
They might not, but I don't know, I would like to see it. I think 1 or 2 people have done that. Like, hey, we're doing a live stream and I'm in this part of the world and I'm talking through Skype or whatever. This person in a different part of the world, they show evidence there in there, either newspaper or evidence. And they look at either the moon or the sun and they see if they see it or not. I think we need a little more test of this in different parts of Earth at the same time to see if we see or don't see the objects in the sky, you know?
And
That's a good
from New
idea.
York City to Australia is actually closer to 10,000 miles than it is 5,000.
Almost 14, like halfway around what you call the globe. Yeah.
And you know, it'd be really nice. Yeah. Speaking about Australia, guys. With all them
Can you guys
in
take a look
space.
at my screen for 1 second, guys?
Yep. Yeah, can I just throw that in there that we have Terry that does the pre-show. He's in Australia, right? You know, and usually he streams right before Jose, so we can always do a quick, you know, sunrise and sunset picture live like that.
Well, I'm gonna show you guys how distance could be a factor on why the sun disappears.
Okay, what's the angular size of your ball?
Yeah, no, we haven't get there yet. That's gonna be a factor, but let's
hear
for a moment.
all the way through before we tear it apart.
Yeah, let's listen to him.
All right, go for it.
All right, you guys are seeing it, right?
Yep.
Give me 1 second. Right, you see that? That's moving forward and backwards. It's the same size. I haven't changed the size. It's just moving forward and backward. Forward and backwards.
And?
Look. Right,
yes,
you see how
I
it
understand.
disappears?
So what are we supposed to be seeing?
Yeah.
Well, you guys saying that distance isn't a factor, and I'm showing you that distance will be a factor. It doesn't matter the size. It will still
Yes, but-
disappear eventually if it's far enough.
Yes, but please notice something. It
but the angular
disappears
size of the
in
sun would have to
totality.
change.
Two people talking at the same time there was.
I'm sorry, but the angular size of the sun would have to change, and it doesn't.
It's been measured many times, and you can measure it yourself with a couple pieces of paper and a mirror and a pencil and a watch.
All I wanted to show is that distance is a possibility. That's why we don't see the sun from a certain area.
Except that what you just showed doesn't match observable reality because we don't see the sun shrink in angular size, and it's outside of the error bar of a couple pixels.
I've seen videos where the sun shrinks.
You can get
glare shrinking
with a
but not
solar
the sun.
filter.
You can get a camera, a pinhole camera to put down right at your GPS location, and watch the sun go overhead and watch it traverse across the sky.
No, I got an easier one.
One day.
Sorry, Sean. I got an easier one. Research sunrise and sunsets of non-flat Earth channels, non-global channels, videos pre 2005, and just watch 100 videos of those and tell me how many you see that reduce in angular size, other than one video of Eric Dubé and 20 videos of DITRH using it wrong. Just recording glare.
I want to throw that in there. The videos should have a solar filter on them because the glare can really change the apparent size of the sun.
Chills, does the
hold on, Aaron, before I move on, watch P900 Coolpix channel. That's Sandra, a flat earther. P900 Coolpix, shout out to her. Awesome, magnificent videos. She take a lot of videos of the sun with a good solar filter. She take a lot of videos of the moon, sunrise, sunset. Just watch her videos, and I'm glad she doesn't narrate them and don't give an interpretation to them. She just plays music. Just watch him, think clear, and look what you see when the sun doesn't change in angular size and it's going down and disappear from the bottom up in a hard line on the horizon. It's beautiful. Just look at them.
Yeah, this demonstration we're seeing here is very, very salient. This is something you want to keep in mind.
Mind of Manny has his fourth new name in the chat out there.
Is it just me roboting, or is everybody roboting?
I think it's just you right now.
Okay. When you guys come through, it sounds robot-y. Might be me. Chills, I wanted to ask you, does the atmosphere, when you look through it, exhibit magnifying effects? And before you answer, I would like to refer you to a glass of water on the table. When you put the pencil in it, it definitely exhibits a refraction effect. But when you back up from that glass, what happens to the size of that pencil in that
Put it in a
glass?
square glass instead of a round one.
Like 3 feet away. I mean, come on.
Well, first off, you don't have to qualify or quantify that. The atmosphere does indeed exhibit a very, very minor magnification effect.
I saw a pencil in a glass of water from
Yeah,
1
well,
foot
the atmosphere
away
is not
back
water.
up to 3 feet away. Whoa. That's going to be a Nathan Oakley toe tag. The atmosphere is not water?
No, it's not.
The
It
atmosphere is
consists
not
of
water.
gases.
It exhibits fluid dynamics, but it's not water.
Oh, yes, I know it's not water.
And somehow, if you were trying to claim it's like looking through a glass of water, you would have to somehow, because it have that glass of water, be following. You'd have to have that glass of water be the same from every angle in every place around the world. Only the sun and the moon, and not anything else in the sky that goes away.
Sure.
Like an airplane would retain its size until it goes over the horizon. Wait. All right, it's special pleading, because anything else that's in the sky that goes away it doesn't suffer the same effect.
Well, yeah, basically, but it,
Yeah, that's right.
But it could be relevant.
That's right,
if
because you
think
don't know what the sun is, so it doesn't qualify with the same things that we observe
Yes,
on the Earth.
Travis, here's the thing. My example wasn't going towards the sun. If you are looking at a boat, and I think most people on this panel would agree that things start getting obscured after you go out about 3.5 miles if you have an eye level of 6 foot.
Okay, so let me just give you my own personal observations where.
Can I actually finish my point first, Travis?
I thought that you paused. I apologize, Dan.
I paused so you can understand that first part. Here's where your explanation runs into a problem.
Have you heard my explanation yet?
Yes, ether band.
I haven't.
Right, but if you're
I haven't heard it, but it's okay, I guess.
If I can finish this,
So
then he can answer.
continue with your point. Continue with your point. And then let's hear Travis'
if you're
explanation.
looking at an airplane, as it travels away from you in the sky, it reduces in angular size in entirety. So if it's only an atmospheric refraction or an atmospheric obstruction, you would expect part of that plane to disappear in the same way, but it doesn't. It remains the same angular size, or it changes in angular size in totality until it disappears.
Okay,
That was a long pause. Yeah, I think Travis go now.
Okay, so you've made a statement. What's your question?
So why are you so adamant that it's the atmosphere obscuring things from the bottom when that doesn't happen in any other observation? Because otherwise the things shouldn't change in angular size the way you would expect with perspective.
Okay, so
have you ever seen a cloud?
Hold on,
obscure?
Aaron.
Hold on, Aaron. Let plane through. You gotta go.
Aaron, give plane a chance.
Okay, so two things that I would say then. First, I have said on numerous occasions that objects disappearing from the bottom up is not the norm. It is a very small representation of what we see. So I do not assert that things disappear from the bottom up. So that's not something that I say, that's a straw man, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the atmosphere doesn't allow an object to disappear uniformly across the horizon, okay? So one of the things that Jose talked about with the light posts or whatever going off into the distance, I would challenge his assertion that they disappear uniformly. I would say that they don't. I don't believe the atmosphere allows that to happen. So those two things that you asserted about me, I don't make those claims.
Okay,
so,
and
where are these pictures of things not being obscured from the bottom up?
Watch my channel. Watch my channel. I don't have any records of things disappearing from the bottom up. And I have thousands of pictures and hundreds of hours.
You're saying they don't disappear from the bottom up? Are you saying they're all still in the image but compressed within it? Is that your claim? I'm trying to figure out how you mean they don't disappear from the bottom up.
Well, the atmosphere is the medium through which they get distorted. So however the atmosphere distorts them by blurring them or enlarging them or diminishing them, because it's not uniform, it never, in my opinion, never happens uniformly, right? There's no standard of the atmosphere affecting something that I've seen in my experience.
Will you accept other people's experience?
I will accept that they think that's what they're seeing unless they can show. And I'm
Well,
not. Hold on, real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not talking about producing an image of an oil tanker or a freighter that is past the horizon and looks to be cut off halfway. That's not what I'm disputing. I don't dispute that. I want to see you trace that freighter moving away from you at the y-axis, not moving across your field of view at the x-axis. That's not the same thing.
Can I posit something for you to think about?
Sure.
Okay. Many people are on the flat side say things like, it disappears from the bottom up because X, Y, or Z. That's pretty much a very common narrative, and I'm fairly certain you'll agree with that. If I'm wrong, do correct me, by the way. So I do have one observation that I'd like to share and have some people think about, is as these things are disappearing over what I perceive as the curve of the horizon, and if that obstruction occurs at sea level or roughly, around that zone, why does the top of the ship get shorter, or, why does the top of the ship drop down further and further and further if there's no curve? And there's no demonstrable interference from any sort of atmospheric phenomenon that is extending above the top of the ship. So
how far away is the ship?
Typically,
Yeah, I can answer that.
Typically, this happens at about the 3 to 4 mile mark.
Yeah, I can answer that, and I can offer up my own footage on my channel where I have a cruise liner sailing away from me until it moves around a cape, and so I can no longer see it. So it's 14 miles away from me. I trace it the whole way. I do not see it disappearing from the bottom up. I see it being changed by the atmosphere along the way, and compression is a demonstrable effect.
How did you measure the distance of 14 miles?
Because I have the location of where I was shooting from and the Bay Bridge that is 14 miles away from me, and it passed underneath the Bay Bridge and went around the Cape.
Yeah, I was going to say the plane lives near a very busy waterway, and I'm sure he's got a pretty good idea of measurements on his home turf.
Gotcha. I just didn't know how he quantified it.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a good question. It's fine. But all I'm saying though is, and again, when I first started shooting last year, two things. The first thing that I debunked for myself was, it is incorrect for us to say that we bring things back over the curve. We don't. You can't do that. All you're doing
Absolutely correct.
All you're doing is telescoping to that object that has moved outside of the ability of your eye to see that.
Magnifying.
Absolutely correct. I agree with you completely on that one, Plane.
So that's a bunch of bullshit where we say we bring things back over the curve. That's a misnomer. That's not the way.
Thank you. Yep.
If I was wearing a hat,
I agree with the flat earther for the first time.
Plane, if I was wearing a hat, I would take it off to you. I really would.
I try to be as honest as I can, guys.
Yeah, Travis is an interesting flat earther insofar as he would be considered a heretic amongst flat earthers.
Right? Yeah, that's me, man. That's me. Yeah.
That's a little bit of how I was, because I always say, like, I really refuse to look at the lights in the sky, and I did when I was in the verge of like living flat Earth, because a lot of things in the globe starting to kind of make a lot of sense in the globe for me, and then I refuse to look up, and they say, but how about the sun and the angular size and the sunrise and the angles to Polaris and the rotation? I say, like, I refuse to look up to the skies until I figure out 100% what's going on down on my feet, long distance observations, because everything in the sky adds up and it works perfectly on a globe, and it did. And I had the point since I was a flat earther. They said, then you're not a flat earther. I say, I'm a flat earther because, well, there could be an alternative. You know, I still cannot figure it out. I cannot explain it, but I'm not going to give you an alternative on the lights in the sky until I figure it out down. Now, when I decided to look up, I didn't have an alternative, so I had no choice. I mean, it's a globe.
Right.
You know?
So can I ask you a question about that very point, Jose?
Yeah.
Do you think you were being 100% intellectually honest when you were refusing to make those observations, looking at things in the sky like the sun, star charts, and everything else?
I was being 100% honest, not dishonest. I just refused to do it. I mean, in a mysterious way, most of the people say, you're dishonest. You want to just deny. You don't want to look at the whole picture. I say, no, but one thing at a time. I see 2 points. I see 50-50. 50% of the observations is where we stand on the ground. Actually, more than 50, but I gave it as a 50-50. I say, let me figure this out, come to a conclusion, and be happy with it. And then I'll pay my attention up to the skies. And there's I mean, it's okay to take that position. I don't agree too much, but me, because I was there, I have to kind of, just let it slide a little bit because I was there and I understand it will destroy, it will scramble my brain too much if I wanted to think about it without figuring out the observations first. It wasn't being dishonest. It was just being maybe taking a more of an easy route.
Right, that's fair enough. It's probably the best explanation for avoiding looking up. But if we want to understand where we do live, surely you have to take all the observations and all the contradictions that something like the flat Earth put in front of us. You must look at all the observations.
Right, but our position typically is that the observation of the celestial bodies and movements is simply an observation. It does not tell us the shape or the nature of the ground upon which we stand.
Travis, right?
Travis, it's called the celestial sphere. Is what it's called.
Thanks, Dad.
Right, but Travis, you've said yourself you haven't done the measurements on the for the temperature for you haven't recorded all these measurements for your own observations. So yours are just observations, whereas there are measurements for all these bodies in the sky, yet you're just not willing to look at them.
Right.
Can I ask one question, guys?
Okay, it's not that I'm... Go ahead.
Is there this is just curiosity, right? Is there like the official governmental body that gives you information on the globe? Like, does it all come from one source, one agency? How does it all work? How do we all think that we live on the globe?
It's individual observations.
Let me
things that you can do on your own.
Can I handle this one? Can I handle this one, please? Matrix. There is one single governmental entity that disperses all information about the globe to all globe proponents. Just like there is one single entity
you're giving away our secrets.
One single entity that disperses all information that is used by the flat proponents. There is no one single source. As a matter of fact, we take great pride in the fact that there is not one single source. There are many sources from many fields of science, many fields of study, and we take great pride in that.
Okay, so another quick question, guys. We keep saying, you guys keep saying, the body of science. Can you guys give me who is the CEO of science? Who can I call? Who can I email?
I have never used that term. Yeah, I have never used that term. Neither nobody else in here have used that term.
But I'm saying,
even if
when
we
you guys say science,
Matrix, even if we use that term, you do realize that the whole body of science, it means all of science.
I'm just trying to paint a picture for the audience, right? We hear that term used a lot, right? The body of science. Science.
It's a
I just want to know.
Construct. It's not like an
what
entity.
does it actually mean?
If you think there is a president of science or a king of science, you're sorely mistaken.
No. I don't think that. I'm just asking because every time we have something, right? So what I'm understanding is you guys have information from several people, agencies or whatever. So does Flat Earth, several people that do independent. But somehow our information isn't good enough. For some reason, is it because we don't have 20 PhDs or something?
Matrix, I can answer that one. The body of science doesn't refer to an individual entity in any way, shape, or form. It means largely we're referring to the information gathered from individual sources synthesized into one coherent body of information. It doesn't have to be run by anything. It's just a collection of knowledge.
But this collection of knowledge has to be gathered and categorized by somebody, right?
It's humanity.
It's categorized by
probably the right way to
different
say
sources.
it.
Right, and you could take science down to even cooking. Cooking is a science. How long do you cook an egg for? How long do you cook?
Well, baking is a science. The rest of cooking, maybe that's an art.
Why is Western science different from East Asian science? Why is that different?
There is no difference.
Absolutely, their textbooks are different. Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, someone said that humanity is the determining factor. Who was that said that?
No, I was saying that the body of science, as far as the social construct and how people submit to it and build general consensus, is around the general view of humanity as a whole. There's no body that oversees it or governs it. It's just humanity as a whole submits to it.
Right.
And
So
agrees.
now, yeah, right. So now we have a certain faction of that humanity that says, "I question it."
No, anybody can submit. There's no.
I didn't say that anybody couldn't submit. That's not what I said. I said that we now have a contingency of humanity that is standing up and saying, "I question the cosmology that the collective has presented to the rest of the world."
And anybody can do that. That's
Yeah,
you're free to do
not
that.
unusual. The only thing that's unusual is that you're reaching 2,000 years into the past to try to disprove something, versus a contentious subject in modern science.
See that exact right there. That's what I'm talking about. Those kind of statements, like 2,000 years. Who determined this 2,000 years ago?
Yeah.
P900s are from 2,000 years ago.
They think they have it all figured out, guys.
No, there's no there's no problem with questioning anything in science. But what you need to bring is actual proper explanations, not just observations, but measurements, explanations, and explanations that don't contradict other observations.
We do, but you don't. Right?
Yeah, where is that law written?
As opposed to what? As opposed to what? Can you give me your empirical facts, please? Any empirical fact of the globe.
We can start with pictures from space.
All right. Well, this went from science to conspiracy, so I'm out of here. Take it easy, guys.
Can I jump in real quick for that? Okay, so let's go back before we have pictures from space. What was the best argument for the proof of the globe? Because I think that should be. Hold on, please. Hold on.
Yeah, we are living today, Travis. Let's not step back. Just remember that. Let's not avoid what is in the table today, please.
No, I don't accept that.
Calm down.
Accept that, Jose.
Your proponent is the one calling Travis out, saying that, oh, we have pictures from space. Travis, he's not just going back on his own. He's actually making a valid point.
A question, and I answered it. That's not a call out. I answered a question.
Travis, go ahead.
Yeah, my only point is that I believe because the majority of history would have argued that the Earth is a globe for a longer time than we have had photos. So I would say that those arguments, which are empirical and which are things that you and I can actually criticize and analyze, right? Because the only thing that we have to do is to say, well, look, there's a picture. Okay. See, so when we show a third grader a picture from space, they don't think that's not an argument. A picture from space isn't an argument. They're not taught how to assess and analyze and evaluate empirical data. They're given a picture.
We're adults, Travis. You've been given an option to show pictures.
Jose, yes, I agree with that, but you have to realize that I'm only now making this decision 40 years after I was told and shown a picture that shaped the way I think.
Travis, go back to pre-1969. What evidence was there?
What was the best empirical argument? That is what we need to deal with, and that is what we're questioning, not pictures.
I give a quick point because I got to drop. Yeah, I got to drop. Kind of my final statement. You can talk about, I mean, back in the day before the space trips, before 1950, let's say, before there were pictures or no pictures, you can talk about it all day. But for today, at least, the last point that was presented, there's pictures of satellites and the missions and all that stuff. That's, I think, is the more honest approach is what we got today on the table and what we can present. If you want to step back and talk about the past, it's up to you. Thank you, Sean G. Thank you, everybody, for having me, and I'll see you tomorrow in my open discussion show. Boom!
Actually,
Yeah.
have a good
Pictures are not arguments.
The past comment was brought out when they said 2,000 years ago.
Well,
so you guys brought that up.
Okay, can I go ahead and answer some of these questions that have been raised?
I don't think I've asked any questions. I've made statements.
Oh yeah, Travis was
You
still on
did ask a question. You asked what the best evidence pre
Travis was
1960
still on a go round about
I know one.
pre 1969. What was the best evidence for the globe? That's it. That's
lunar
what
eclipse.
And I would like to answer that.
Okay, I'm mute.
Okay, Al Baruni. Next question.
No, I've already debunked that last year.
How did you debunk
listen,
it?
guys, listen.
Okay.
Okay.
If you've debunked that, could you please go ahead and show us?
Well, it's very simple. The horizon is not a fixed location, so he cannot make any determination. What he's seeing is apparent. He's making his measurements on an apparent location. It's completely false.
Apparent just means that it changes due to where you're observing it from. It doesn't mean it changes if you're at 6 feet.
That's not true.
If your observer height's 6 feet, the horizon does not change to 20 miles.
That is not true, Sean.
When does it?
I have video footage and
How did you
photographic
mark off the
stills.
mileage?
Okay, the way that I have done it so far is simply with photographic evidence, and that is that I have farther distances past the horizon, looking toward the red roof house or past the channel marker. There are farther.
There you go, Aaron.
There are farther demonstrations.
Red roof house strength.
Listen up, please. Listen up, please. The horizon is demonstrably shorter and longer in my shots that I take from the same location. So the horizon itself presents itself to me as dynamic and changing. It is not static. So if you're asking me if I've measured those, no, I've made my point clear. I would need a team of people to help me measure these things and be consistent with those
Right,
measurements.
but why are you so confident to reject the modern consensus when you haven't made any of those measurements?
I don't need to make measurements for myself. I need to make them for you. I need to persuade you, and I'm not really at that point. Yeah.
Plain. I have a question.
Can you just give me an overall meaning of general consensus? What do you mean when you say that?
Well, before this, could I just throw something to Plain real quick?
Go ahead.
Okay, if you have no need of these measurements to back up your assertions, then how do you expect to stand on solid ground?
No, again, don't misunderstand me. I said for myself. For myself, I don't need to do this. When I present this material to you, I will have to step up, Shills. I will. But that's for you, not for me.
Okay. And Matrix, you were saying?
That other guy, I don't know his name, he said general consensus, and the way he emphasizes it is like it's some sort of truth. Like if everybody believes it, it has to be true, and we all know, or at least have the suspicion of understanding that isn't the case. So how could he just say general consensus, and
general consensus
out like that?
General consensus refers to the body of evidence that has been built up to support that point, that current understanding of what we are looking at.
General consensus is not an opinion necessarily. It is an opinion supported by evidence. It's not an unsupported opinion, I should say.
I would
by the general consensus though, but for the general consensus to be able to accept this information, that means that we'll have to be able to understand this information, or they're just accepting it.
It just has to be tested and validated.
So you're telling me general consensus, right? 100%, right? General consensus.
No, general consensus is not 100%.
No, I know it isn't. But what I'm trying to tell you is general consensus is is like you guys are saying the majority. Am I correct? The majority of the people believe this. Now, do you believe or understand that the majority of the people?
You're mischaracterizing what the general consensus is.
What was that?
Jeez.
You're mischaracterizing the general consensus. The consensus point of view is the opinion held by the majority, but the consensus view is the view that is supported by the greatest amount of evidence.
I'm gonna say something that has nothing to do with this or flat Earth. I want to know what you guys think about this. 75% of the people are mindless zombies. What do you guys think about that?
Say that again.
75% of the people are mindless zombies that don't question absolutely anything. What do you think about that?
I think I'd like to see the evidence.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see evidence on that.
Well, the majority consensus think we live in a globe. Wouldn't that speak for itself?
I don't think you understand how this works.
Let's talk about.
No, let's stick with this. This is interesting.
Yeah, Matrix. What is the evidence that 75% of people are zombies?
No, stop it.
There
Shields,
seems
you might like
plenty of evidence that 70 that
Shields, you might
most
like
How do you
of the people
quantify a
are not
zombie?
inquisitive. Well, I quantify it by the people that surround me, and I ask them about the people that surround
So
me.
you're using personal experience as an anecdote, as opposed
wait a
to
minute.
actually using measurable information.
Let's
real personal experiences. I don't know your experiences. I don't know.
let's approach this methodically. First off, Matrix, I would like to know better, in your own words, how you would define mindless zombie. What do you mean when you say mindless zombie? Could you tell us a bit more about what you're trying to say?
Well, when I say mindless zombie, I mean like people just kind of go about their life and are not very inquisitive. They're not searching for whatever we're searching for that we come on here every day, right? You understand? Like they're just living. They're pretty much like in the game, an NPC character. They just do what they're meant to do. That's it. Whatever that they don't have any other source of interest outside of whatever they want to do.
If I could give a personal anecdote, and it'll be very brief.
Please do.
Yeah, before August 2017, I was a mindless zombie. I didn't question anything. I didn't think about anything outside of what my interests were. So in terms of politics, education, science, history, all that stuff, I didn't question it. So
shout out to Flat Earth.
This seems to be the
would it be
consensus,
then
though. The majority
Matrix,
of people just don't question anything.
Matrix, you don't need to shout here. We're all just having a conversation. But so would it be then safe to characterize what you're saying as you equate a mindless zombie to somebody who is without curiosity of the natural world?
I definitely do.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. So now let's move forward using that definition. Would that be fair?
If that's what you want to do, man, go ahead.
No, I definitely want to be fair to you. I don't want to put words in your mouth or misconstrue what you're saying. Would it be fair to summarize that as someone who's just not curious about the natural world?
Shills, I got a mindfuck for you if he's not going to answer.
You could say that, or just like mouth breathers, just people that are not inquisitive.
Well,
about
let's try to avoid insulting humanity and whatnot. I want to try and clarify and quantify.
Well, let me before you say what you're gonna say. Do you talk about flat Earth in your personal life?
Chills. Stop it.
Do you talk about flat Earth in your personal life, like the people that's around you?
Honestly, no.
Shields, you're trolling. Stop trolling my flat earther. Just let him go. Let him go.
I'm not trolling. I'm trying to clarify what he's trying to say.
I know, but there's no point, right? There's no point. I got a better one for you. I'd rather focus on you, right?
Aaron, this is not your show. We have an ongoing thing. Matrix, would you like to continue with Shills?
Okay.
All I was saying is that for the Globers, how the people that don't know about this react is pretty much the majority of the people, right? I can't give you a number, I can't quantify it, but it seems like there's only a small percentage of people in history that have ever questioned things. The majority of those people in any phase of history, they just simply go with the flow, with whatever agency, whatever government, whoever's in charge, whatever they say goes.
Sure, they're taught from children. Yeah, they're taught from children, from books. I'm with you, Matrix, right? We're taught from books. We're taught from a scripture, you can call it. Yeah. So
how else do you spread knowledge then?
What knowledge? I mean, gee whiz, now we're getting deep. What knowledge are you talking
through
about?
Books, through TV, but how would you get the knowledge to the people that don't have
TV.
Electricity and TV like that? Yeah.
I wouldn't say TV.
Okay. First of all, spreading knowledge is not the same as giving folks the idea they can ask questions, right? Spreading knowledge
What?
as
Wait.
a
Does
definite.
science? Hang on,
Or
Aaron.
this
Does
is it.
science?
This
Does
is it.
Aaron? Does science ask questions or give answers?
Does my textbook ask me a question, or does it fucking demand an answer?
It
A
explains.
good textbook would do both.
It explains and describes.
Sean, our textbook demands an answer.
Okay, find something
From what
in
I
a
read.
textbook that can be corrected, that has been corrected. Go. It is, and I'm not saying there's not. There's actually one very obvious one. Go.
Say again.
Something that you were taught in school that we found out that is not true.
Like the
Oh, that's the easiest one.
Evolution.
I was going to say more like
Pluto
Columbus.
is not an Earth.
Pluto is no longer a planet.
Hey, Sean, what were you
or
going to say?
Or Columbus.
Yeah, Columbus.
But guess what? Yeah, guess what?
Like
You ready? You ready? You ready for this? We know it's not real. So therefore, that narrative isn't exactly as concrete as you think it is. We do ask questions, and things that happen, we do find out were true or
but
not
we don't
true.
ask them in class. That's what Matrix is saying.
I did.
Like we don't.
Well,
We can't ask them.
No, you can. I'm sorry, Matrix didn't, or his teachers didn't allow him to. But I asked questions. I remember distinctly
if you don't
asking
put
him.
down those answers exactly how those textbooks are, you fail the class, Sean.
No, you don't.
So what are you talking about?
That's not true at all.
Yeah, see, my chemistry.
That is totally true, Sean. What do you what that is
You
absolutely
want to know? I know it's not true. Ready?
Common Core.
I've had three teachers. One in high school, two in
Sean,
middle
are you
school.
still in school?
No.
Are you still in school?
No, but this is
Come on.
very. Shut up. So, those teachers literally spent their lives doing biology. Spent their lives studying history. Spent their lives.
Teachers?
Yeah.
Bro, teachers are not as dedicated as you put them out.
No. Your
Kind of
teachers
read
weren't.
the
No.
script.
Matrix, your teachers weren't. Do not
No, I
blame
had
all
a
teachers.
biology book.
At a certain
Right.
point, maybe teachers were very enthusiastic about it, but bro, nowadays these teachers they don't study the shit that they just read the
That's your
manual.
opinion. That's your opinion. Have you
My
tested
sister's
this?
a teacher, and she like is very passionate about it.
I'd like to inject something here.
Chills,
Matrix.
go ahead.
My oldest daughter is a music teacher. Now, granted, it's not sciences, but she has dedicated herself to her subject, which is music, and she is constantly studying. She's constantly digging through old textbooks, old manuals. She's finding new information constantly to better herself and to better her understanding of her subject that she studies.
Oh,
and that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, and
My older brother is
not to mention also Matrix. My brother, he actually is a coach for high school football, and he also volunteers and goes and talks to other schools and teaches them about physical health and his issues that he's had. So not all teachers are like that. So make sure you make that very clear.
My older brother is hang on, Matrix. My older brother is a chemistry professor at a mid-sized university in Tennessee. My sister is a high school special education teacher. They're both incredibly dedicated, and both are having to. One of them in particular has to find new and different ways to relay information to children. The other one is involved in quite a bit of research.
Yeah, don't make that.
They're always asking questions.
And I have an ex that is a chemistry professor at a major United States university that, she would be awake until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and then get up at 6 a.m. to get prepared for her classes.
Okay, listen, hold on. You guys are totally missing the point.
Yeah,
you
you're
are totally
relating-
missing the point.
Yeah, big time.
Can I
So-
restate? Can
You know,
I
this is
bring
about
us
the
back
truth,
to the
man.
point, please?
This is about making flat earthers look bad. That's the
Okay.
problem.
No.
No,
Yeah, they're not
hold on,
stop.
Aaron.
Everyone stop.
They're going off very
Everyone
good
stop.
points, but go
Aaron,
ahead.
shut up. Stop. Everyone stop. Let's get one thing straight. Matrix, do not bring that shit here because no one has said anything negative about a flat earther. Not once. Second of all, you have a very bad idea of how things work based on what you think. And you're making it seem that this narrative that's going around is so evil. And we're just giving you examples of how you cannot say all. and you continuously say all.
I have
All right.
not mentioned evil once, Sean. Not
Hold
once
on.
have I said
Listen,
evil.
we have strayed from the point that Matrix made, and that is, okay, I'm going to affirm what everybody said about your relatives, everything. I'm going to affirm their passion, their zeal, their own personal study. The point was that in the classroom, the student who does not answer the way your relative has presented the material will fail.
Bullshit. You know that most
You
high
can't
schools,
give
especially in San Diego,
you can't give
your
an
whole-
incorrect answer, Sean.
What?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Chemistry. Chemistry, you could give a wrong answer. Because if you work the problem out entirely,
That's bullshit core curriculum, dude. That's such bullshit.
If that's what you're dealing with now,
like you guys are reaching,
that's
man.
a
Like,
bad school.
Wait, time out.
That's a bad school.
Hey,
That is
Travis,
not.
Travis and Matrix, you guys know how to make a cake?
Okay,
No.
I'm asking you a question. I asked a question.
Making a cake is not giving multiple choice, true or false, or essay answers.
Hang on. Do you know how to make
I'm not dancing this dance.
Okay, then don't answer it. Matrix, do you know how to bake a cake?
I do.
We're going to continue from this, man.
Okay, well, anyway, yeah, the answer would probably be yes, most likely. And in that's fucking chemistry. And if you do it wrong, your cake's going to taste like shit.
Well, what does that have to do with the topic at hand, though, man?
It's a bad cake, but it's still a cake.
You just said you can't have a wrong answer, and yes, you can. Just like you can have bad ingredients, just like you can have a bad interpretation.
Okay,
of
listen.
something.
Okay,
in the case of passing a grade,
hold on, Matrix. Hold on. Okay, let's say I'm in a I'm in a culinary classroom, and I totally bomb the culinary quiz. I don't prep the salmon right. I don't prep the fillet right. I don't.
Your hollandaise curdles.
All that stuff. Yeah. You're telling me he's gonna go, it was good. You tried.
There's a
You
difference
totally.
between
No one said that at all.
There's a huge
It
difference
tastes
between
like shit.
grade school and killing somebody.
Okay, who said anything about killing anybody? You are completely.
You're talking about going. No. You're talking about going on to actually going to school for cooking. You know,
I didn't bring up cooking.
Cooking, man. He's making a general.
You're
He said culinary. You said culinary.
That's a skilled trade
Sean,
too.
Culinary.
Came with the
Sean G actually brought that
Come
up.
on, man.
Yeah, this is absolutely.
I did.
We are not
would like
following.
to-
We're not
Wait, time
following
out.
your
Travis,
Jedi mind.
Travis and Aaron, you guys can't just talk nonstop and then no one be able to answer anything.
Yeah, we can if we want to call your bullshit out.
So,
man.
are you doing the rage quit thing again right now? Is that what you're planning? Shit,
No,
just
I
stop.
didn't rage quit. I didn't rage quit. You kicked me. I called you out. You kicked me.
No, actually, you decided to go on a little tyrant for no fucking reason.
Yeah,
just like you're
because
doing right
you
now.
lied.
Okay,
because
wait.
You lied.
See, that's exactly what it is. I didn't get personal with you. I didn't call you a liar.
Don't
Matter of
worry,
fact,
Sean,
here's the thing.
Sean,
I just
easy,
gave
easy.
Aaron, shut the fuck up because you're half the reason.
Just go easy. Go easy. It's okay.
First of all, I didn't lie about a damn fucking thing. Second, don't fucking assume.
Yes, you did.
What the fuck did I lie about? And you better come up with a good fucking reason rather than some bullshit reason.
Okay. The conversation that we were having with Seek and Find, okay, you said that he brought up a subject that you brought up.
Oh my fucking god! You call me a liar? What was that?
You brought up the thing, and then when he
What was
called
that?
you out on it,
What was that?
Sean, I don't
What
have
was
the
that?
fucking show memorized.
Oh,
Go
but
back
you
and
got
look at
that
the show.
memorized, huh? What was
Yeah,
it?
that's
What was
right.
it?
That's right.
Travis,
That's right.
Aaron, shut
Travis,
up.
Let's, hey, everyone, let's
Aaron,
step back. Hey,
No,
hang on,
no, no,
It
no,
doesn't
Sean.
matter what
No,
the topic
because
was,
I
Sean.
was called a liar, and I'm gonna figure this the fuck
Easy.
out.
Step back. Everybody
what did I lie
step back.
about?
Aaron, no.
I want to know what I lied about right now.
The topic doesn't matter.
Oh,
You
it does matter.
said-
It matters.
No,
I
it
want to
doesn't.
know what I lied
No, it
about.
doesn't. Okay, it was about
What?
Barbie dolls and Ken dolls.
What the
Okay?
fuck did I lie about? Otherwise, how is it a lie?
Well, okay, Sean. I'm
Yeah,
going to
that's
tell
what I
you what
thought
I'm going to.
so.
Sean,
I
no.
thought so.
I'm going to tell
No,
you.
I'm not
tell
gonna
you
listen
what
to
you
your
lied
bullshit.
about.
You're a
shutting me
liar.
down.
I don't know
right,
what you know.
You're
What
shutting
the
me
fuck
down. Okay,
Yeah, that's
Sean,
how
you don't
it
want to hear
feels.
it, do you? You don't want to
Exactly
hear
how
it.
it
Oh no,
feels.
it doesn't feel like shit
Travis,
because you're totally. totally.
Travis, stop.
You are
Travis.
such a joke. You're such a joke.
Travis,
man.
don't fish for a kick. It's not going to get you
Stop
anything.
it. Travis,
I'm not trying to fish for a kick.
Stop. Travis, stop.
So, can we all take a breath for a moment, just kind of relax and say, okay, get your focus, and let's try to get this back on track again, okay?
I agree with Shills.
I'd watch
Hey,
yourself before you next time you
cool.
call me a fucking liar, Travis. Especially without any actual reason.
Fucking
You
hell,
wanna
I
hear
didn't
my
even. I
reason?
forgot
You brought
Montreal
it
was
up
here.
again. You just brought it up again. You want to hear my reason or not?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. You said that Seek and Find brought
Stop
up a
it,
topic.
Travis.
God, hey, you know what?
Travis,
If you don't
let
shut the
it
fuck
go.
up, Aaron,
Let
I'm
it go.
going to boot you off my panel because you do not stop talking. Shut the fuck up.
It doesn't matter what the topic
It
was,
does
Sean.
matter because that
You
would be
brought
what I
up
lied
the
about.
topic.
That would be what I lied about. So go ahead.
No.
What was it?
Look, you didn't lie about Barbie dolls and Ken dolls. You lied about the fact that Seek and Find brought up the topic. But it was
What
you
was
that
the
brought
topic?
the topic.
So I can verify whether or not it's true or not.
Go back and watch your show.
No, you brought it up. You called me a liar. So
Okay,
let me know.
everybody on the panel can understand the fact that I'm talking about the fact that you accused him of
Yeah, I
something
did.
he
So,
didn't do.
Yeah, well, guess what? Maybe you
You
didn't.
accused
Maybe
him of
you
something
misheard.
he
Maybe
didn't do.
you misheard, and maybe
I
you
didn't.
weren't.
I have a question
No.
for
Bye, Aaron.
Chills.
I swear to fucking God, shut up until this is done. Now, again, it matters because maybe you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and maybe it is something that Seek and Find constantly brings up. So otherwise, you're just saying bullshit right now.
No, that's not what happened, though.
Then why
What
don't
happened
you let me know
was
what the fuck happened?
I'm telling you what happened without giving you the content of
Well, you need
the
to because that's
statement.
exactly what would probably prove you wrong.
Okay, you don't understand the situation. I don't have to tell you what the
You
subject
don't have to say
was.
shit at all, but you're not going to call me a liar and think you're just going to have a merry old
Why
time
am I
on my
calling
fucking
you a
panel.
liar? You tell me why I'm calling you a
Because
liar.
you have fucking issues.
Okay. Okay, we can let this drop now. Let's let it drop. Don't talk again about
I'm
it.
not going to let it drop. And this is my panel. You're not telling me how to run it. If you're going to call me a liar, then you're going to speak up. If you don't have anything to back it, then shut the fuck up.
Plain truth. He's looking for hour or minute or what.
Okay, look.
You have to repeat exactly how he said it.
Okay,
you
look.
have to tell him what he was wearing and what you were wearing.
Hold on,
Bro,
Matrix.
so
Matrix,
this
hold
is
on, please.
retarded.
Matrix.
Matrix.
Hold on, real quick, Matrix. Hold on, real quick. I will yield, and I will concede if Shills thinks that I have to specify the topic rather than the act.
All right.
You don't get it. You
How
meant
about this?
act.
First off, Matrix, you got no dog in the fight, just like I got no dog in the fight. That's why I stayed quiet. You might want to do the same. Secondly, Plain, I know better than to get involved with this social Vietnam. I ain't going there. I'm staying out of it. Thank you.
Anybody else? All I'm looking for is confirmation that I have to give the topic rather than the action, which is my point.
The only thing I'm going to say on the issue is if you make a claim such as this, you should have some inkling of how to back it up, and you cannot shift the burden onto him to go back and look for it when you made the claim.
The only thing that I'm saying then is that it's the action. So you want me to find the timestamp because the topic
I don't
doesn't
want you
matter.
to find the timestamp. I just want you to be able to support what you said.
My statement is enough. He accused Seek and Find
That's not
of doing
supporting
something.
anything. Not supporting it. Show proof. Show that I did that.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll do it. I'll hunt it down.
Oh, by the way, Sean, you might find one of Bob's recorded live stream. You might find interesting. He had about an hour-long conversation with Doxy about horizons on airplanes HUDs.
I'm so sick of hearing that. I'm about to go over there and wreak havoc. That's
I'd love to talk about. I'd love to talk about horizon dip or drop. Yeah. With
Why?
whoever said that. Was that Brian?
Want to do circles?
No, it's the horizon line on a HUD for a plane.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Isn't that like literally called a false horizon, or what's it called?
Brian?
It's called an artificial horizon.
Yeah, there you go.
And
Sure. What is the angle of dip there, or the drop to the horizon?
I have no idea what you're asking. I was just referring to that there is an ongoing debate about that in the flat Earth community, in the flat Earth versus globe community, and you can watch Bob have a discussion with Doxy on it. That's all I was coming across to say. What is
Okay,
the
well,
angle? What is the angle dip of the horizon? That's a very weird question. I don't know how to answer that.
Well, I could refer you to a couple. You know, if you're on the shore and you set up a level, and you've seen this done before, maybe water level, like 3 pipes with water in it. Have you seen those true line experiments there to the horizon? And it
Doesn't the
seems
amount of water affect
to drop, right? That the horizon seems to drop, right? Have you seen
The
that,
horizon.
Brian?
You mean using water levels at eye level or at the Adelaide to measure that the horizon is not at eye level?
Even with the theodolite, yeah.
I think he's talking about that thing that Tommy did that one time with the tube in the water. Is that what you mean?
Hold on, Matrix. Hold on, Matrix. Hold on. Brian, have you seen those? Yeah, there's theodolites. There's the water pipes. You know, with the the water level, you can sight through them. And even I think Bob the Science Guy did with the level.
It's a theodolite, and it's just a fucking leveling site. It's
Okay.
nothing special.
So every single time, the drop seems to be what, 3 degrees?
No, it's not. It's not uniform. It increases with height.
No. Yeah. I'm talking about those ones on the shoreline, maybe 20 foot up, even 40 foot. If you're looking out to the horizon, that angle doesn't change too much. You know.
Between 20 and 40 feet, of course, the angle's not going to change.
It does change, though.
Unless you're like 3,000. Yeah, unless you're like 3,000 feet up or 36,000 feet up, like Wolfie, through the HUD, who showed a 3-degree angle down to the horizon. That's where it gets weird.
Why?
Why? Because on the horizon, or on the shore, sorry, looking out to the horizon, there's a, if you have a level, if you've seen all the Glober experiments, whether it's water level or even just a construction level, there is a dip. There is a dip to the horizon. And then you see Wolfie's HUD video, and there's also a dip to the horizon, and it's about 3 degrees. Now, my point is, if the ether band is a 3-degree obstruction out to the horizon,
What is the ether band? I don't understand.
Flat. If the shit that we can't see way out there, we're just focusing down on the what we think is a hard horizon.
Maybe,
Or what if the ether band was only 3 degrees?
Are you telling me the
So,
ether band
in
is an
order to be a
invisible
ball,
something?
In order to be a ball, or
No, hang
in
on.
order to
Aaron,
be flat,
Aaron,
it would
are you
only have
telling
to
me
be
the
raised up
horizon
3
is invisible?
degrees. That's it.
Aaron,
Just 3 degrees.
is the ether band invisible? Which makes the horizon an invisible...
It depends on what Wolfie's HUD is measuring. It depends on what... It's a non...
At 36,000 feet, can you describe to me what 3 degrees is?
At 6 feet, can you describe to me what 3 degrees is?
No. You're asking...
At 6 feet, it's nowhere close to 3 degrees drop in from eye level to the horizon.
It appears flat from 6 feet to 36,000 feet. It appears flat.
Nope. Matter of fact,
no.
you do
Wolfie
realize that...
measured 3 degrees drop. That's it. At 36,000 feet.
And? I don't understand what you're saying. It went from less than a degree.
We also
to Aaron, wait. Let me finish my point to you. It went from less than 1 to 3 over the course of 36,000 feet.
On the beach, there's a 3-degree drop.
No, there's not.
No, there's not. The horizon is this.
There are global videos, and Sean G can attest to this with the theodolite Flat Earth Perth has done it.
No,
Yes,
you're
he
wrong.
has.
I will not
There's a
detest. You're
3
wrong.
degree drop at
No.
sea level.
Are you serious right now?
There's not a 3-degree drop at sea level.
You really
To
serious?
the hard
Hey,
horizon.
here, check this. You
To
ready?
the hard
Are you ready?
horizon.
Are you
That's what
listening?
I'm saying.
Hey, listen. Ready? The horizon is at 0 degrees, and directly overhead is 90 degrees. You hold your fist up at arm's length and place it over your fist, resting over the horizon. The top will be about 10 degrees. Appears in the location of the sky where stations will be visible first. So, now that you know where
Shield.
horizon is, you may want to restate what you said.
Shills, what do you think?
Right, Aaron, I might have a way of trying to get you to understand something. Have you ever fired a rifle?
I'm repeating Wolfie's experiment.
Jesus Christ.
Or not experiments, but videos, you know, what he's shown, what he's done, his observations. He's done it from the ground, and he's done it from 36,000 feet, and the what he's measured for the drop is 3 degrees. That's it. From elevation or
and
ground level.
that is no. You're wrong. The horizon is not 3 degrees below 90 degrees. It's not 3 degrees below eye level at the horizon. So you're wrong. But can you please follow this through? Have you ever fired a rifle?
Yes.
Right. So if you were looking through that rifle and we zero this rifle at 100 yards.
You mean
okay?
I don't look through the rifle, the bullet goes through the rifle.
No, you look through the scope.
Okay.
Right? And we're going to zero this rifle at 100 yards. Okay?
What do you mean zero? Like zero it at 100? Meaning take a couple test shots, is what you're saying?
I'm going to ask the question again. Have you ever fired a rifle?
Yes. But you say we're going to zero it at 100 yards. What does that mean?
Sight your... Oh, my God.
Yeah,
Right. So you are checking to make sure that the bullet is on target at 100 yards. So where you put your crosshairs of your telescope, you want to make sure that your bullet hits.
It's not a telescope, it's just a scope, but yeah.
Fucking Christ.
Right. So,
Sean
if we
G is
assume
two drunks talking to each other.
Will you stop using our Lord's name in vain, please?
Sorry, what was that, Travis?
I was just asking Sean not to use our Lord's name in vain. Thank you.
I apologize, Travis.
All right. So, Aaron, we're going to zero this rifle at 100 yards. Okay?
My name's Aaron, not Aaron.
Sorry. I apologize. The rifle is zeroed at 100 yards, so the bullet will strike where we put our crosshairs. You agree?
Yeah, I'm talking about the, 20-mile observations with a theodolite.
Yeah, and effectively the scope on the rifle is a theodolite.
Actually, the scope on the rifle is much better than the theodolite. You're right.
Right. So if this ether band was real, you realize that the bullet would only ever strike would only ever be accurate at one point.
So how come Wolfie?
However, that I don't care about Wolfie. Let's walk through what I'm talking about now. Okay. When you have, let's say, a 308 rifle zeroed at 100 yards, you will actually have 2 0 points on that trajectory. One is at 40 yards, and one will be at 100 yards. So if there was such a thing as an ether band, that wouldn't happen because your optics wouldn't be able to look at more than one point.
I'm not talking about ether band. I'm talking about 3 degrees. They can't be measured, and it's only 3 degrees.
You just said 3 degrees can't be measured, but as he was saying there's 3 degrees, you've measured it. What are you talking about?
It's the same thing, Aaron. No, if
saying is, if you've seen Wolfie's HUD, 3 he's the horizon in the background of the HUD is 3 degrees below, but the pitch of the airplane is at 0. It's going flat. But there's
Planes
3
don't
degrees.
fly
Now,
flat.
if you've also seen observations, from the beach level,
Plane isn't flat.
Bob the Science Guy did this on a Patagonia or a deck or whatever, and he set a level out there, and he measured it at 3 degrees even from sea level. So what I'm saying in support of Travis is, what if the ether band was this 3-degree questionable area?
And that was my question to you. If you are using something to look through this ether band, you would only ever be able to zero a rifle at one point. The fact is that if you zero a 308 at 100 yards, you will have 2 0 points.
Okay. And how accurate are snipers? Like
At 100 yards, I can put. At 100 yards, I can put 2 bullets with
100
through
yards.
the same hole.
I mean, come on, gee
Right.
whiz,
That's
100
what
yards.
I was going to ask. Isn't that just human error? They and them. It's just human error.
Exactly.
Could I add something here real quick that's salient to the previous conversation?
Yeah, go ahead, because they're not following mine.
Okay, at a measurement at mean sea level down to the horizon at a height of 6 feet, i.e. approximate human adult eye level, is 0.0786338 degrees. At 36,000 feet, it's calculated out to be 3.36032 degrees. So no, they are not the same. There is approximately a 3 1/3 degree difference between the two.
Shields, why does Wolfie's heads-up display show a 3-degree drop to the horizon from his heads-up horizon, and yet Bob the Science Guy showed he put a level out? I know you saw that video. He put a level out, and it shows, and he actually did the calculations. It's still a 3-degree drop to that hard horizon on sea level, but they're both the same.
Right, so Aaron, can you please get us that video where he did it? Because I would be surprised if Bob
the Science
fucked
Guy,
up.
it's your boy. It's your boy. You can get it.
He's not my boy. I don't have a boy in this fight. I am me.
That was a solid channel. That was a solid channeling of Aaron Raw there. My boy? I don't have a boy.
I have me. I'm willing to listen to anyone. That's one of the reasons why I actually like Sean G, because he'll give both sides.
The channel is Bob the Science Guy Level 2 Horizon. I believe that's what it's called. And it was from about when was that, Travis? 6 months ago, maybe 8. He's been around. Level 2 Horizon from a beach patio.
I do. I've got a picture here that I've been waiting to present.
Yeah, I avoid Bob the Science Guy like the plague, so I don't go near.
Yeah. But Travis, when we're making points, we're
except
gonna
in my latest parody song.
Yeah, please do. And can you guys allow him to, please? Damn, it's not the plain Aaron show.
What do I do? Share the whole screen?
You have to click on the presentation on the top right. Make it pop up. There you go. There you go.
All I know is it just shows you different levels of the horizon below the level of the water levels.
And you can go get a theodolite app on your phone for $4. Show you this right out in 2 seconds. I mean, if you really want to know the truth about how it works.
I downloaded one for free.
Yeah, but mine has so many more options and calibrations. It's awesome.
Well, I'd be able to do this experiment because I don't have a mobile phone.
So, nothing to say about this fact that the horizon seems to be a lot lower the higher in elevation you go. I mean, to me, that's kind of indicative of a curvature right there.
So I would like to address Aaron and his claim that Bob says it was 3 degrees. The angle equals 0.372 degrees from level. So not 3 degrees, 0.372 degrees.
And Bob also wasn't at sea level. He was a bit above it. And he also later went on to apologize because in his, he didn't realize that there was a bend in his level, so it registered artificially high.
Okay, so not 0.3 is with the ether band. It's basically 0.
That's
0
10 times less than 3.
Yeah, I know.
No, you
I get
didn't.
that.
You didn't know. You forgot to carry the decimals.
And the evidence.
And logic.
So what I'm saying is, at 36,000 feet, I only need 3 degrees to make it a sphere or to make it flat. Just 3. Just 3.
You did it again.
Right?
Yeah, but didn't you just do the math there, Shills, on that?
Yeah, I went to the Advanced Earth Curvature Calculator. I plugged in 36,000 feet for the height and checked the angle downward to horizon.
Okay, so here's what hold on real quick, Aaron. Let me ask this question. So what I hear you saying is you're giving us a standard mathematical expression that is universal in every single situation, so that whenever we measure this horizon, it's going to measure that angle. Otherwise, it means nothing. Is that what I'm hearing? Did I come across
Now this pic is from
understood?
Rory.
But the one I'm showing.
I believe it's from Rory, isn't it?
Did anyone not hear my question?
Oh, it was to Aaron, wasn't it?
No. My question. No. My question is to you, Shills, and everybody else.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, you gave us a mathematical expression, right?
Yes. The result of one, yes.
Okay. So unless that's going to be treated universally in every situation, and therefore you have to have the exact same measurement every single time, that measurement means nothing.
Well, first off, you're going to have some minor difference because of observation.
Okay. Do you have the records?
There's going to be error bars. There always is.
Yeah. Is that your thinking? Is that your opinion? Right. I mean, we would have to have this.
That's fine. He can try to pin me. It's just not going to happen. Go ahead, Blaine.
No,
Go ahead, Blaine. Go ahead.
Shills, I'm not trying to pin you. I'm trying to establish the fact that we don't have a universal expression everywhere we go. This is just a generalized, like 7/6R.
This is
7/6R.
This is a universal expression. This is a formula that is universal and works. What does not work, and here's where the error bars come in, is when someone is looking at something, say, I can't recall how far away the horizon is at 36,000 feet, so I'll just say 100 miles. Okay, I'll pull a number out my ass. All right, we agree on? Hold it, Aaron. Aaron, hang on. I'm talking to Blaine here for a moment. So if the horizon is, say, 100 miles away, a number I just pulled out my ass from 36,000 feet, each person is going to see that a little bit differently with each observation. So there might be, a 0.0001 degree difference or whatever. But over time, with more observations, with further investigation, that error bar is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until it reaches a point where it's just going to be there.
All right. So who's making these continual observations and updating this data?
Pilots.
You
Mathematics.
said over and over time, we're going to refine this so that it's actually perfect. That's still
No, I did not say perfect.
okay. More accurate. That still
Correct.
is right. That still proves too much in that you're going to have a standard that is going to be able to be expressed every single time you measure it. And what I'm saying,
First off,
Travis, you're a truck driver, aren't you?
okay, can I finish my
hang on.
statement real quick?
Let Plane finish. Let
Okay,
Plane finish.
so if I wanted to geek out and take your math and go to the Chesapeake Bay, I am going to predict that I am not going to get uniform measurements ever.
Now, what do you consider uniform?
Consistency?
Consistency within what error rate?
Right. If I wanted to geek out, I would have to go down that avenue, and I haven't done that yet. But what I'm saying is, in general, from what I've seen, we cannot predict what the horizon is going to do. It's like a woman.
Okay.
There's no way you can tell what she's going to do from day to day.
Well, I appreciate the joke. You also haven't done the math to say that there's no predictability.
I don't need to do the math for myself. I need to do it for you boneheads.
Okay, first off, I didn't fucking insult you, so don't throw me in there.
Okay. You bonehead, whoever spoke.
Retract boneheads.
No, how about you not disrespect? How about you not disrespect anybody on my panel?
Well, you disrespect Jesus all the time, Sean.
You know what? That's your belief, not mine.
No, well, you disrespect me, Sean.
No.
He's my Lord.
Let's take this back. Let's take this back. Let's take it back.
Yeah, stay
Let's
on point.
take it back to let's take it back to the conversation's topic. Okay, Plane.
Yes, sir.
When you make a measurement, let's say, for example, you're building a simple set of shelves, okay, and you take a measurement with your tape measure. Is it going to be exactly the same each and every time you take that measurement?
This is not the same as measuring the horizon.
I'm making a point. I've
been
okay?
down this road.
Are you going to have the exact same measurement each time? No, you will not. Of course not. We know this intuitively.
But I built a house on a flat plane, and the measurements are on a flat plane, so they're going to be the same. They're going to be the same as if you were measuring it from the perspective of a globe.
That's not true.
There is, please, Sean and Plane.
Not even close.
You're right.
Sean and Plane. Sean and Plane. Can I finish this, please? When you take those measurements, let's say you're measuring out an 18-inch shelf. It may measure 18 inches plus 1/100 of an inch. It may measure the next time 18 inches minus a 33rd of an inch. But you accept the fact that that's 18 inches. That's close enough, and that conforms with the diagrams that you drew up to build those shelves.
A 33rd of an inch is 1 inch. A 33rd.
A fraction. Okay, we'll just say a fraction.
Aaron, see the next time you're cleaning your ears, when you feel resistance, stop pushing.
Okay.
Anyway, that's where the error bars come in. There is always going to be minor fluctuation due to human error. Now, whether that fluctuation is significant or not, that's where the multiple measurements come into play. It reduces the significance of those error bars to the point that they become insignificant.
I understand that.
Okay.
Now,
Okay, go ahead now.
Sean.
Yeah, I understand that. Hold on real quick. I'm sorry. I understand that those measurements are due to human error, and the observations that you're making about the horizon do not prove that the Earth is curved. They're simply measurements of the horizon that fluctuate. You haven't eliminated, or I don't think anyone has, all of the other variables that can explain why the horizon changes.
But, Travis, do you not see the contradiction in what you're saying? You're claiming all these things without having done any measurements.
Okay, that's not true. I have done measurements in terms of checking the information that's given to me. I haven't written out and documented everything that I've labeled. Okay, that's not a contradiction. Besides the fact, I'm talking to Shills about his construction analogy, and that is due to human error. Okay, so unless we're going to attribute measuring the horizon to human error, which we're not, we're attributing it to the horizon itself. It is not analogous.
It is analogous because we're dealing with human eyes that have to interpret where the horizon begins and ends.
Okay, so please show me in your equations for the measurement of the horizon where the human error is accounted for.
It is not significant.
Show me that. Prove it.
It's a mathematical equation. There
Then
is
it's
no
not human error. Then it's not human error.
But the observation that you are trying to make is going to have to take into account human error. That's where the fluctuations come in. That's what I've been trying to say.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the human error aspect. The problem that I have is that you are attributing a mathematical expression that is not due to human error. If it is due to human error, then I think that you have a large question to ask yourself as to whether
apparently,
or not.
Apparently, either I'm not understanding you correctly or you're not understanding me correctly.
Okay, that could be possible.
We've got a functional breakdown because I'm not following what you're getting at here.
Okay.
So let me try to just quickly finish this up and then let others speak because I know that there are others.
Yeah,
when I mention human error, I'm talking about the observation itself. The calculation that was performed is pure mathematics.
Mathematics are deterministic.
Mathematics are objective. They are not subjective.
Correct.
Observations.
Thank you for having me. I gotta go. It's getting late, man.
Thank you, Matrix.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, Matrix.
Later, Matrix.
Later, Matrix.
So it's when you bring in that objectivity of observations that's where you get things start to get a little fuzzy. So the calculation in and of itself, given a perfect horizon, a perfect observation, that calculation will be correct perfectly. However, because there is an observation involved, it becomes objective in that end of things, and so the mathematical equation won't necessarily line up perfectly with the observation. There will be some error. However, given a proper observation, it will be insignificant.
The guy that said that Bob the Science guy, took the level off his dick there and said it was actually a 0.03 degree, whatever.
No, he said not 0.3.
Not 0.3. Okay, that indicates flat. And then Wolfie, when he goes up and says that there's only a 3-degree drop to what his heads-up display says is the horizon. As there's a bunch of factors going on there, pitch of the airplane, everything, but we're talking about 3 degrees here. So,
Hey,
so
I'm sorry, Shills, you're making a lot of noise. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I'd muted myself. Thank you.
If me and Travis could negate the 3 degrees, that's it. That means it's flat, right? Like, if it was a 25 degree, or okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
It's only
if you went high enough, you could see 25 degrees.
I got one for you.
It's
You want
only
to talk about
3
20 degrees?
At 36,000 feet, it's only 3 degrees. It just gets
That's
kind
the scale. That's the scale of what we're working with. If you go higher, it'll continue to drop.
Okay, it gets fun to talk about because if you're only giving flat earthers 3 degrees,
all right, so sorry,
we're going to question you all day long. We're going to question you all day long.
Could you do a favor for me, please?
At 36,000
Yeah,
feet.
what's up?
Right, so the highest manned flight in the atmosphere is roughly 80,000 feet.
The highest what?
The highest powered flight record in the atmosphere, it's 80,000 feet, correct?
I'm not sure. I would have to look that up, but I mean, it sounds in a reasonable range.
Right, so at 80,000 feet, could you see what the angle would be for that drop, please?
Certainly.
We don't know. Yeah, hypothetical. Come on, Shills, don't go there.
You mean facts?
No, the problem is if we don't go there,
the maths work. The maths work.
Yeah,
Do it.
but this
Crunch
is
the numbers. Crunch those numbers.
This is the thing, though,
the number would be 5 degrees.
right. So it's not 3 degrees; it's 5 degrees when you go higher, and it'll be more degrees when you go higher again.
Yeah, 25 degrees, like you're asking for, would be closer to. So I'm going to say about 28 million feet. Oh, sorry, 2.8 million feet.
Okay, I want degrees. Come on. Degrees of dip.
That was 25. That was 25
That was
degrees.
25 degrees.
Yeah, well, you've never been there. You don't know that. It's just math.
And there comes the argument from incredulity. You don't know. You've never been there.
Incredulity. I mean,
That's not incredulity. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
man.
That was an argument for incredulity.
So,
that was an argument for incredulity. What he responded with there was the genetic fallacy, because I haven't personally done it.
Neither has flat Earth.
And you haven't, so that's actually true.
Yeah, it's just
Either
a mathematical
has flat
expression.
Earth. Either has
Yeah,
flat Earth.
That's not our argument, though, Sean. It's not our argument.
No.
but you're arguing for the fact that it's not true. But you personally have not done the same thing. You have not been there to disprove it.
So we're at an impasse, right?
Well, I mean, would you take a picture if someone gave you a picture of it? Would that make a difference?
No.
No?
I would love
so
to.
we had to discount all pictures then, right?
No.
Like your observations, Travis?
No. It's all context oriented. It's all context
Well,
oriented.
yeah, exactly. But
If
we're on the context of this, yeah, if we're on the context of seeing this curve, then you I think that all pictures should be allowed.
I would love
okay,
to.
listen, hold on real quick, Aaron. So again, my arguments are made from a microcosm to a macrocosm, right? So what I'm observing in a small scale locally with 5 miles, 2 miles, 9 miles, and 12 miles, that is something that can be manipulated and tested and observed on a regular basis. If you give me a picture of something that's 2.5 million feet up, I can't go there, so that's what I'm going to disqualify, because I can't verify it.
Hot mic, your hot mic and unpaid. I'm gonna mute you.
Oh,
go ahead. Mute yourself. Just wanted to let you know.
So just because you can't go do it means that it has to be discounted?
No, it means means on the small. It means on the small scale. On the small scale, we can see something that is obvious and observable and testable. Therefore, extrapolate that to the larger. I'm going to discount the larger because what I see on the smaller is evidence that the larger is impossible.
So, wouldn't you say that something that's done on a smaller scale can be scaled up to a larger scale?
Go back and look at Bob the Science Guy's patio level thing. It was not.
It's already been looked at, and
it's already been looked at. It was a 3-degree drop. I don't believe you because I haven't seen it. I'll go back and double check myself.
Sean, I will take a screenshot and I'll send it to you on Discord if you could present it, please. Off the description from
if it was not
Science Guy.
0.3, not 0.3,
no problem.
not 0.3, that means it's flat. That means
That doesn't mean it's flat.
I mean,
Zero means
no,
flat.
it actually means it's not. It means it's not flat because the horizon was not at eye level.
With atmosphere, I mean, come on. What was he looking at? Right?
He was looking at eye level.
Right. Yeah. Listen, guys. Listen. Aaron just said it. You just opened the door. Okay. He looked at it with his eyes. You don't, and you're not accounting for the atmosphere. You're looking at math. Okay, that's why I'm.
You're going to have to quantify the effect of the atmosphere before we can even take your word for it. Until then, you're just providing empty conjecture.
Do it. I am begging you to listen to me.
But he just did it with a picture. It's his picture, right?
Plain.
I see. Plain. Please listen for a second. You are providing empty conjecture in the face of established science. Either please back it up, or don't bring up empty conjecture. It's worthless.
I am going to back it up because you guys are demanding it. But what I'm saying is you can't quantify the atmosphere. You can't.
Then why are you quantifying it with your observations?
I'm not quantifying it.
Ether band.
Yes,
the ether band is you're doing it.
And I have to agree with Plain
No,
on this
I'm-
one. He's not quantifying it. He's actually anti-quantifying it, if anything.
He's qualifying it. He's not
Okay,
even, he's qualifying his
he's
statements. He's not
including it.
quantifying it.
He's including it in his
correct.
observation.
I'm describing it. I'm describing it. I'm analyzing it. I'm processing it, but I'm not going to put a number on it.
However, Plain, I back you up on that last one, but I've got to call you out on this one. When you say this is what's causing this effect, and you provide no mechanics that can be described in any mathematical model or demonstration, that gives absolutely nothing to your argument.
Well,
that's why we're kind of standing here with our hands up, going, what do we
I think
do?
that solidifies the argument right there. That's what I think.
Shills, hold on real quick. Let me respond to Shills real quick. I agree with you to a certain extent. Now, I can show you video after video and show you, and you can watch with your own eyes the atmosphere change before your eyes.
But
so
you
we
can't
can,
trust your eyes.
In 10 minutes.
I've seen it.
Okay. Right.
Plain,
but-
I've seen it. I understand what you're getting at.
Guys, let Plain finish his point.
Okay. So at the point that I'm at, I don't believe that I can give 10 to the minus, 17, whatever. I can't say that because we can't get there. Every time I move my distance, if I try to get closer to it, I'm changing the variable right then and there. It can't be measured because it changes constantly. There is no constant.
I'm presenting right now, they and them.
Thanks, Sean. But here's the thing,
Well
Travis.
said, Travis. Well said, Travis.
No, here's the thing, Travis, right? Each time you go out, if you take the measurements of your GPS location, an accurate measurement of the elevation of your camera, an accurate measurement of the temperature of the air pressure on that day, you can build up a model that we can test.
That model is a fluid model. It keeps moving. You understand?
That's why if he takes a measurement every time he goes out, you can build up a model and understand what changes are affecting what changes
So
in the observation.
You want Travis to do what science has never ever done, right?
What science has not true.
Let's see. We want Travis to come up with something that is equivalent to what science has already done and quantify it in a way that is understandable outside of belief.
76R is not a representation of what we see.
76R is an average condition. It varies.
It's
and
not a
according
representation of what you see.
God damn it! Can you listen for a second? It is an average. Now, some places are going to have differences according to the conditions that are around there. An average is one thing. The thing is, if you know the other variables, you can make an adjustment and get what's going to be in that location at that time. Just because we have a working average doesn't mean that we cannot ever account for variables.
Does 76R take into account cold and warm water currents running across
No,
a
but
body?
you know what does? Getting everything else together and adjusting that value,
So
because that
76R
value,
is not
because that value
a
is adjusted.
mathematical absolute. It's not. Right?
No, I said it's a mathematical absolute. It's an average that we like to use. You can adjust it according to the variables that go into its formulation.
It's a basis for the rest of the
76R assume
formulation.
the Earth is a globe.
76R is a standard refraction. We use it as an average when conditions are unknown.
Doesn't it assume that the Earth is a globe to begin with?
No,
Not
refraction
necessarily.
has.
Isn't that terrestrial refraction what you're referring to?
Refraction doesn't necessarily mean.
Aren't you presupposing your thing before you
There's
start?
nothing
I'm
wrong.
not.
First of all, there's nothing wrong
No.
with presupposing anything, as long as you're willing to verify what you're presupposing.
I'm just saying though that you're presupposing. Let's make that clear.
We're not.
We're not. I do.
Because the refraction. No. But the refraction, everybody has admitted that refraction occurs whether this be a globe or a flat Earth. Refraction is a thing.
I don't know.
Yeah, but 76R is
Montreal?
specifically referring to terrestrial refraction.
And Montreal,
And
if I
it's
might add something.
assuming.
Montreal, if I might add something, in all due fairness, Plane is doing a little bit of presupposition because he's saying it's this ether band of his, but has no mechanics, no mathematics, no numbers, no quantifying observations. Simply that.
Agreed, but you can plainly see it,
fair.
Shields. No, but what Travis is saying, he's just renaming something, let's be fair, but you can plainly see it.
What is
it's
that
like
something?
a haze.
No, it's invisible.
It's not invisible.
Yeah, it doesn't have an explanation, no description. It's
Travis, you're saying it's
band.
invisible, this ether band?
No, I'm not saying.
Can you
that.
describe it then?
The ether band is the accumulation of
Stop it, Travis. Don't do it. Let Montreal
Aaron.
go.
Holy shit.
All right.
Travis, do not.
Listen, Aaron, I'm not afraid. It's okay. Look.
He'll be okay. He'll be okay, Aaron.
As we look over distance, the accumulation of air compounds and distorts what we're seeing.
Wait,
okay, so if it's close to me, okay, listen, if it's close to me, it appears to be invisible.
A cumulus of air. Air isn't.
Sean G.
Well, I have a question then, Plane. I just caught something you said there. You said an accumulation of air causes these distortions. Do you then mean, by the same token, that a clear pressurized container would be able to recreate those distortions at a shorter distance?
It's not the observation he's taking. Shields, come on.
Why are
Hold
you
on,
talking
Aaron.
right
hold
now?
on, Aaron. So my answer to that would be no, Shills. But if you, if you line up 1,000 of those jars consecutively, you will have a compounded effect.
So then, would it be more fair to say then that it's not simply the atmosphere that's causing it, but also the distance, a combination of those two?
Yes, that's exactly where I stand. That's
so
exactly where I stand.
As I've understood what you were saying, and apparently I was wrong. As I understood, it was strictly an atmospheric thing, not distance related. So I apparently misunderstood what you were saying. Thank you for clarifying.
Do you better understand it at all?
What do you call that? He fucked with you.
It's still broken. It's still broken from what he's claiming of a bunch of jars stacked in between each other of highly pressurized air, because you're introducing a bunch more variables, including bottles to look through.
5-minute warning, guys.
But again, Travis, and please explain to us why we can't see something after 3.5 miles, but we can see something over 10 miles in the air because we're looking through more of this accumulated atmosphere.
You're just describing something without any substance, so I'm not going to be able to answer your question sufficiently.
Here, how about this? I'll show you.
I don't have to have you show me.
Oh. Okay.
I can get my files out and show you my files.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see your ether band.
There's an easy answer to that. There's an easy answer to that. There's more accumulative gases near the ground than there is up high. Plus, you have one aspect like your deck. The deck is missing. It's very simple.
Temperature.
If I move Montreal, if I move up 10 feet, how much less dense is the atmosphere?
Temperature, pressure, medium.
We're not talking about dense. We're talking about how you view things. Like where the gases are accumulated. They're accumulated more on the deck, right?
Yes.
It's not a thing to understand, guys. But before because he said 5 minutes, I want to make a point that you guys overlooked while you were talking about the boat thing.
Montreal, I move up 10 feet.
If I may.
What is the difference? What is the difference?
Sorry?
I ask you a question, and what is the difference if I move up 10 feet? Please explain it to me.
Montreal, go about the boat thing.
I don't know. It's simple. You just have a higher viewing angle. I don't know. I don't understand what your question is.
Oh, wow.
But
that would change your perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really matters where. You should probably answer that because it's not what you think.
I don't think I understood his question because I was thinking of something else I wanted to talk about.
Actually, you asked where is most of the. You said most of the atmosphere is by the surface.
I said most of the gases.
Yeah, that's what I meant. But
at the surface, yeah.
But it's not.
It's not? I'm wrong on that?
The density of gases is highest at the surface.
Yeah.
The majority of gases is well above the surface.
About 500
Well, that's what I meant. Sorry, I misspoke. The density I meant.
Okay, so what is the density difference between 10 feet and 6 feet?
I am actually looking at a pressure chart.
Don't get sucked in, Montreal. Don't.
Shows, if you find that, would you send it to me on Discord? Because the only one I can find is going on 500 feet differences.
I did mine. I did mine by 50-meter increments, all the way up to the point where the atmosphere is effectively zero pressure.
I'd love to
guys, if you don't mind, can I make a comment on something? I didn't speak much tonight. I just want to say one thing because you guys were wrong on something.
Yes.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Montreal.
Thank you. When you were talking about the boat, thanks, Sean. When you guys were talking about the boat over the horizon, you said that the flat earthers, and I'm not a flat earther, you know that, right? I don't know what shape the earth is.
You're a geo, whatever.
But you guys said that that the flat earthers say that you can bring back the boat after it disappears over the horizon. That's not what they say. What they say is that you guys, through this century... Sorry?
They say
Sean,
when there is
let him
obstruction.
I can bring up all sorts of videos. Of
Yeah,
flat earthers
let me
that-
finish. Let me finish. It'll be more clear. What they're saying is what the round earthers have been saying for centuries is that the reason when the boat goes over the curve, the reason we see it disappear, I mean bottom up, sorry, is because the earth is curving. You understand what I'm saying? It's you guys that say that. But now with modern technology, when we look at what you say happens, we bring that back and we say, hey, you're wrong.
Okay.
Either the earth is... This is what I say. Either the earth is bigger...
Modern invention of the telescope from the 1500s, that thing?
We're going to end it with
Hold
this.
on,
Aaron,
you guys.
I swear to God, shut up. Aaron, stop talking. Stop.
Couldn't hear
Stop,
Montreal.
Aaron. I don't care. You can't hear him, but everyone else can hear him just fine.
Finish.
Stop fucking talking. Stop. God damn it, man.
Finish.
Dude, please shut up. Just don't talk anymore. You're annoying the fuck out of me right now. Damn it. We'll end it with this. For that, Montreal, I would ask that you show me a boat in the distance with obstruction and then bring it back without the obstruction. That is what Flat Earth claims.
No, that's not how it works, Sean. You guys claim
I can bring up
standing on the beach. Sorry?
I'll go live tomorrow and I'll go live in an hour and I'll show you every clip of 100 flat earthers saying that exact observation. As a matter of fact, I have one of Grayson saying it last night.
All right, can I ask for?
Then I misunderstood it, Sean.
So where we start to see obstruction of a boat, and we say it's due to curvature. Flat Earth says, "Well, how come you can zoom in and bring the boat back?" Which means lose the obstruction.
No. What they're saying is the observation is meant with the naked eye.
No.
Right?
Nope. Because you don't even start to see obstruction once
that's
you
where
lose
the
resolution.
issue is. It's with the naked eye, Sean.
Wait, how do you bring it back with your naked eye?
Exactly. You can do it back then, but now you can't.
You can't do it with your naked eye.
You squint.
You're just saying, Montreal.
You know what I'm saying, right? I believe you know what I'm saying.
I need to qualify something, please.
Just because you can look out in the ocean and you stop seeing a boat and then use binoculars and then see it again, that's not the argument.
The argument is with the naked eye, we can only see a 6-foot man can only see 3.5 miles, correct?
Approximately.
So that's the claim. So that's when they say that the boat disappears. Now we know
No,
we can
that
see
reef
further
starts
than
to
that.
go over
It's
the
not true.
horizon.
Yeah, we
May I
that's
speak,
what the
please?
claim is. Come on, guys. That's
May
what
I
the
No,
claim
it's
is.
really not.
I think Plane might have something to add here. What do you got, Plane?
Okay.
Means.
Hold on, Montreal. Hold on, Montreal. This is a qualification. So I have never heard anyone